Welcome
Table
to,
to help the city with something.
Wait,
like this,
what?
but-
welcome to the April 28th, 2026 regular meeting of the City of Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended.
State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting include representatives of the city's planning department, city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Workman Associates.
If you wish to address the planning commission, please come forward to the lectern when recognized and put your name and address on the sign-in sheet. And please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the planning commission and not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that might disrupt this meeting, please turn it off or silence it. At this time, I ask the planning commission recording secretary, Kathy Zarnicki, to conduct the roll call.
Mr. Buechner?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Fox?
Here.
Mr. Hudson? Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Here.
Ms. Parakis?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Quorum present, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next is the approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move.
Mr. Faison, seconded by Mr. Fox. Any discussion? All right, we're ready for the vote.
Okay, Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have the approval of our minutes from our April 14th, 2026 meeting. Mr. Buechner moves and Mr. Lambert seconds. Any discussion, edits, corrections? Okay, we're ready for the vote.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now it's time for public comment for items that are not on the agenda tonight. So if anyone is here to speak on something that will not be on the agenda, please come forward now. Okay, seeing no one, we're going to move on to our next item, which is a preliminary site plan review for site plan JPLN 2026-0004. Proposed the Learning Center Child Care Facility, east side of Troy Center, south of Big Beaver, address is 755 West Big Beaver, PIN 88-20-28-104-002, Section 28, presently zoned Big Beaver zoning district. Mr. Buechner?
Is this the time that I should say, I own a daycare? It's part of my business. It's a small part of my business. I've been told by some people that if it should come to a vote with the commission, whether I should stay in or I should step out. I'll leave that up to my group.
Okay, thank you for that disclosure. Discussion from everyone?
He can stay. It's a different location, different, to me, it's different enough.
I concur with Commissioner Krent.
Mr. Fox?
I guess my thought is nothing against Mr. Buechner personally. I just worry in the chance that, say, we decide to either postpone or vote no on this item, depending on completely separate factors, if there's a risk that a courtroom may look over the fact that Mr. Buechner was potentially involved. I guess that's just my thought. I don't have a personal issue with it, but my thought is it could end up coming up later in some kind of litigation.
Yes.
What I would say is a member of this board should only recuse themselves if they believe they have an actual pecuniary or monetary interest in the outcome. If Mr. Buechner doesn't believe that this will affect his income in any way, then there's really no conflict. However, the board can decide otherwise if they believe something differently.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Mr. Buechner, do you want to respond to that question that you presented?
Again, small part of my business, like every part of my business, but I've been on this committee for a while. I've done everything I can to do for help my city. I will continue to do that. And I respect you guys very much. If you want me to step out, I'm happy to step out.
Yeah, so I guess the question is if you believe that you can review this unbiased.
I do.
Okay. All right, so at this point, does anyone have any issues with Mr. Buechner remaining on tonight? Okay, I'll now turn it over to Mr. Carlisle for the presentation.
Thank you and good evening. Tonight before you is a proposed daycare facility. It's a 10,000 square foot facility located in the outlot of the PNC building. It's got a maximum capacity of 163 children. The daycare facility will front on Troy Center Drive in front of the recently approved Bose development, which is now under construction on that site. Access to the site will not change. It will remain the 2 points of access off Troy Center Drive, as well via interconnections with the existing parking lot. The property is Zone Big Beaver, Site Type B, Street Type A, and this is a permitted use. Just for context, so this is kind of part of the whole PNC Tower campus. At the top there is Big Beaver, located adjacent to Big Beaver at the PNC Bank in the Granite City. Obviously, the major user of both space and parking is the PNC Tower there itself in the middle, which according to the applicant is wildly successful and has recovered well from the COVID market and is actually almost at full vacancy, which is great news. You'll note that the Learning Center there is adjacent to Troy Center Drive in the southwest corner of the site, and then the Bose development is just behind it, adjacent to 75. It is Big Beaver zoning to both the north, south, and east, and it's UR, which is urban residential zoning, to the west. This just zooms in a little bit more to the site plan itself. The site that they have kind of condoized from the PNC site in total is outlined there in blue. The building itself is that outlined in red, and there is that outdoor play area, which is outlined there in green. So it's a 10,000 square foot daycare facility. It's located at 11.5 feet off the Troy Center Drive. The Planning Commission is aware that in the Big Beaver District, buildings have to be set at 10 feet. However, the Planning Commission has the right to waive that 1.5 waiver off Troy Center Drive. We note that parking is to the side and the rear of the building. There is a fenced in place space, again in that kind of green outlined area. And again, vehicular access will remain off Troy Center Drive. With regards to parking, there are 23 spaces that are kind of outlined there in blue that's going to be dedicated for the daycare. So there's 23 required, 23 provided. However, in discussions with the applicant, we did require a parking study. This was also what we required as part of the Bose development. So this is all kind of done at one time because we knew this was coming in. So the applicant did give us a parking study, which was included in your packet. The table on the top just outlines what the Troy ordinance parking requirements are. And based on all the uses on the site, there are, by ordinance, again, there are 2,700 spaces that are required. However, when they analyze the actual supply, which is in table 2, they're only going to provide 1,400 spaces on the site itself. So it's a deficiency of approximately 1,200 spaces. However, when they actually looked at shared parking and analysis based on the times of the uses, which are busy at certain times and less busy at other times, they note that though 2,700 spaces are required by ordinance, in actual peak demand, they only need approximately 1,160 spaces. So that leaves a difference of 267 spaces. So at maximum occupancy, they're only 81% full based on their parking study. This exhibit shows kind of where they're at by peak demand by hour. You'll note that they're busiest at the 11 o'clock hour because that includes the uses of Granite City, the PNC Tower are all occupied at that time. So at peak period, they're less than 1,200 spaces. They are proposing 1,400 spaces on site, and we do note that the ordinance requires 2,700 spaces. Again, the Planning Commission has the ability to waiver from these parking standards. We note this was reviewed by the city engineer as well as the OHM, who is the traffic consultant, and they agree with these parking findings as well. They are compliant with regards to landscaping. Where their current location is in the middle of the parking, or at the edge of the parking lot, and so it's very deficient already with any landscaping. So they're actually increasing the amount of landscaping in the area, and they are compliant with those requirements, as well as their photometric plan is compliant as well. One thing that has come up in our review that we think the Planning Commission should have a discussion on is the issue of fence and entrances. This actually is a floor plan showing the building itself looking at a top-down. If you'll note, the line in yellow is adjacent to Troy Center Drive, and that's a 4-foot tall wrought iron fence. And the applicant notes that due to security reasons of a daycare, they need a fence for the classrooms that have outdoor entrances in case there's an emergency. You'll note that every class has a separate egress door associated with their classroom. So that fence is in order to kind of, I guess for lack of a term, hold children in if there's an emergency and they have to run out those doors. You'll note that to accommodate the issue of an entrance on the front entrance of a building, which is required as part of the Big Beaver ordinance, they've kind of placed a corridor entrance located where that arrow is. We note that, however, due to the 4-foot fence, there's no gap in that fence to allow entrance to that entrance. So there should be some discussion about how staff members, et cetera, as soon as we use by staff, will be able to use that front entrance that is adjacent to Troy Center Drive. We also note that there is a 6-foot tall white opaque fence surrounding the outdoor play area. We note that also that fences are not permitted in front of commercial buildings, so those two fences will require a waiver from the Building Board of Appeals. It's not the Zoning Board of Appeals, it actually goes to the Building Board of Appeals, and that would happen at a subsequent date if this is approved. The applicant has provided elevations and rendering. We did just get the renderings today, which we forwarded to the Planning Commission for their consideration. The building is compliant at 22 feet in height. The primary materials include a small brick base and hardy board siding. Architectural details include canopies, awning, and a rooftop parapet. We note that the colors are primarily a gray and blue and brown, but kind of a very mute light colors you'll notice on the buildings. This is the elevation looking from the parking lot. That's the canopy over the main entrance that faces the parking lot. This is the elevation in front on Troy Center Drive. We'll just note it's hard to see the building because of the trees in here. These trees look to be pretty mature, so this may be well into the future of what this actually will look like. But that's the elevation fronting on Troy Center Drive. Again, that fence, that door there is supposed to be that entrance to that corridor, which is fenced off. This is a rendering of the back with the playground area. With regards to transparency, the top elevation is the west elevation, is the one that fronts on Troy Center Drive. That does meet the transparency requirement. However, we knew that the south elevation, which is the elevation that actually is in the playground area, is deficient with transparency. It is supposed to be a 30% requirement. It's a weird function of the code because it's going to be actually enclosed with a 6-foot fence, but the code does require 30% transparency, and it's just short of that requirement. So we think with an extra window or something of that nature, they can meet that transparency requirement. The floor plan includes 11 classrooms with a reception area, and then an additional accessory room such as a lounge, mechanical room, laundry, etc. Planning Commission should consider the 4 standards in the Big Beaver District, as well as the 3 site plan design review standards. And in conclusion, we are asking the Planning Commission to discuss the build 2-line waiver, the parking space waiver, the loading space waiver. I should note that they're asking a waiver from loading space. Daycares typically don't get much or any sort of loading requirements, so we do think that's a waiver that should be granted. 4th, describe how the building matches or complements the PNC building and the proposed Bose building with a 3D model. We did request that they provide the building of the Learning Center in context with the surrounding site, the Bose and the PNC, and the renderings didn't really show any of buildings in context of the other buildings on that campus. So we are asking for a discussion on that. Fence and door operation log, Troy Center Drive, as well as the design standards and the site plan review standards. If the Planning Commission does grant preliminary site plan approval, we recommend conditions of increased amount of transparency along the south elevation and address the door issue on Troy Center Drive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Fox.
This is a question that very clearly shows I am not a parent. So are daycares similar to schools in that there is a typical time where everybody's dropping off and then a typical time where everybody's picking up, or is it just more of a constant flow kind of?
As a parent with kids that have gone to daycare for a
Thank
long
you.
time, no, there's not a set starting time, a set pickup
Okay.
time. It's kind of a waving time. Typically, it varies a little bit, but the typical drop-off time is between 7 and 9 in the morning, and the pickup time can vary from any time from 4 to 6, depending on how your daycare runs. So it's more of a wave in those 2 periods. It's not a set, people drop all their kids off at one time and pick them up at one time. It waves between those 2-hour periods.
So it wouldn't be like they'll have a constant stream at some point throughout the day of cars that have got to loop through. Okay, thank you
It'll
very
be a
much.
slow stream in the morning, drop off during the day, and then a slow stream at pickup time.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Thank you. Can I get a little bit of an understanding about the entrance and the issue with that corridor and fence that you pointed out, which I understand is for getting the kids outside in case there is any issue within the building?
Yeah, I
But-
guess I'll show it from here. Do you have the, I'll show it up here. So this is Troy Center Drive. This is that 4-foot wrought iron fence that runs along the front and also wraps around the side and actually encloses this outdoor door as well. This is the outdoor door to the play area. The primary building entrance is located here. This is the parking lot. The applicant, to meet the building code or the form-based requirement of an entrance on the main road, has included this corridor, which includes a door, which we presume will be locked at all times for security reasons. But there's no way from we can tell that you can actually access this door from Troy Center Drive simply because there's a fence line in this location. We've met with the applicant. We gave them a couple of options to consider. One includes simply wrapping this door with move the fence line here, and leave this little gate open, and have this, still a locked, it can be a locked door for security reasons, such as, key code or passcode. That's one option, or other options that you and the applicant may come up with. But the primary issue is you can't get to this door from what we can tell because the fence is in between the door and the street.
Wouldn't that be also one of the reasons why they have it that way, so that nobody from outside can come into the building for security reasons?
Well, we're not saying that door can't be locked. The door will be locked. And so the primary one, there is a code requirement that you have to have an accessible door that's a functioning door on the street. And two, there are other uses across Troy Center Drive or down both sides of Troy Center Drive where staff may use this as an entrance to get to the sidewalk on Troy Center Drive or vice versa, that we think it could be a functioning door for staff reasons.
And is this pretty typical in design for a daycare center? Having a fence this way?
I review a lot of daycares. Most try to have a fence located in between their front. It is not a code requirement that they have to have a fence. Most do. I have encouraged the use of other softer techniques like landscaping or hedges in place of fences to meet these issues. I raised that to the applicant in previous discussions. They felt for their own reasons that they wanted a fence rather than any sort of landscaping. But it is not a code requirement to have a fence in front of a building and a daycare.
Mr. Savedon?
Thank you.
From my perspective, I've been involved, I've administered the Big Beaver form-based code since 2011. And the form-based codes vary from place to place. Some are very prescriptive. They require a certain style of architecture, like you need to look like downtown Hamburg, Germany, or whatever. Ours is not that prescriptive in terms of design. We just simply require quality materials. But there's some basic tenets that are critically important to our code. They allow for flexibility, but with these tenets, one is placement of the building between 10 and 30 feet from the road when it's a one-story building, which this meets. Another is having a functioning, accessible door fronting on the road. In some instances, we've allowed that door to be shifted to the side, but it's very highly visible. It essentially functions like a door that's on the front, but there's a path. It's very accessible. There are visual clues indicating where that entrance is. But from a standpoint of 15 years in, this does not meet that basic tenet. By having that fence like that, it turns its back on the whole road, in my opinion, as someone who, again, haven't applied this code for 15 years. I think there's simple solutions that Mr. Carlisle mentioned that can achieve compliance but not sacrifice safety.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions for our planning department? Yep, Mr. Tagle.
Put up the site plan again. That's good.
what is our ability as far as building setbacks on the front yard setback?
The planning commission has the authority to pull that building as far back as 30 feet. There can be no parking or drive aisle between that 0 to 30 feet, but you have the ability to pull it back 30 feet.
Okay, and is there, as part of this, is there a cross easement agreement that's going to be submitted? Because I noticed that if the blue line actually represents the leasable or purchasable area, it looks like they need a little bit more to access their parking.
Yeah, there will be a cross, actually, there will have to be a cross-access easement. There have to be utility easement agreements. There's other easements that will have to be considered as part of the engineering review.
Thank you.
Mr. Krent.
One quick question regarding the handicap parking that's kind of separated with a little island there. It shows the width of the parking space to be 8 feet. Some vehicles are 8 feet wide. I'm just wondering, how do you open doors?
There's a middle section in between.
Yeah, I
that's striped
understand
out.
that,
That's how
yeah,
you do
for,
it.
on that
Yep.
one side, but the other side, the driver's side, that's okay, they walk on the
That's
lawn.
required, that meets the ordinance requirements.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, I think we'll go ahead and invite the applicant up. Do you have anything to add?
Hi, good evening. I'm Chris Kajoyan with the Kajoyan Companies. Brought the Bose project in front of you previously, so we're back here. We knew at the time what we wanted to put on this parcel. We thought this use really complements our overall development with the office tower, but also for the community, it's a great amenity. We all know if you do have kids that there's a huge shortage of daycare options. And sorry, before I get ahead of myself, let me not forget to do this so I don't get in trouble here.
Thank you.
But so it's really early childhood education as well as daycare. So it's ages 6 months up to 6 years. So there is actually an education component as well. It's not just drop your kid off and they're playing all day. So it's a little bit of a different model in that respect. The learning experience, who will be operating this, has over 500 locations between the US and the UK. So they have a very clear formula for how they develop these sites, reasons for the layouts, the fences, and all of that. So I'm happy to answer any of those questions. Also happy to address some of the things I've heard already tonight, if you want me to jump into some of those.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to kind of go backwards so it's fresh in our minds, we do have easements in place throughout the site to address parking as well as access on the north and the south of the property. That will satisfy the Bose requirement. That's when they went into place and contemplating this retail. So both of those access drives are currently covered under an easement. If there's something else that's needed for utilities, currently there are some along Troy Center Drive, but if we need anything additional, we would go through that process to submit those easements. But currently today, the way that this was planned was to take into account the existing easements. The fencing on the property, which is the big issue, which, when we saw their model initially, we're building one in Farmington Hills right now. We had questions about it as well, because it's not normal to wrap, a portion of your building in the fence. So looking at the floor plan that you saw before, each classroom actually feeds outside to those, the fenced-in area. And that's generally when the weather's nice and they're going outside to play in the playground, that's how they're taking the kids outside. So that's the primary reason for that fence, is to keep those kids from being able to wander into the street, which is, 11 and a half feet away. And people do come down Troy Center Drive faster than they should be. So the fence is intended to keep those kids safe in that respect. Also, you have kids up to 6 years old in here, so a fire alarm goes off and a kid runs to that door and pushes the door open and runs outside. The fence is supposed to catch them so that teacher, people, first responders can get the kids safely outside, and feeding them to each side of the building towards the parking lot and the playground. So the learning experience, while we had some significant conversations with their team to understand variations of this they've done in other locations, we elected to go to the wrought iron fence to make it obviously more attractive, and make it disappear a little bit when you're driving by because you can see through it. It's 4 feet high, so it's not as substantial as the playground fence. And our hope is still to maintain that fencing. If we created a gap where the entrance is shown on Troy Center Drive, it would cut off those classrooms to the north where they wouldn't be able to access that safely, within the fence perimeter. The door on Troy Center Drive is going to be card access, so it would be for employees only, meant to be able to be accessed from, anywhere where the fence kind of leads into. We do have the signage above that door shown, so anyone driving by, you're gonna see the learning experience sign, the door, the glass side lights along that door. So it gives the impression of, hey, it's a retail type building in Troy, and it I think, in my opinion, meets the spirit of the ordinance in that respect. But everyone who's coming to the site is gonna be dropped off by a vehicle. It's people on their way to work or picking their kids up after work, so they're pulling into the parking lot, parking their car, and they can't just open the door and let the kid run out. They have to bring their kid in the door. The door's locked 24/7. So they see the parent walking up with the kid, they press the buzzer, the door unlocks. So they really are parking and walking their kids in, so that's why it's designed in that manner. As far as the fence for the playground area, we had some conversations to see if we could do the wrought iron fence here as well to, again, dress that up and make it look a little bit less residential, although there is, obviously residential across the street from us. The concerns here, the kids are spending time outside in that area. So they've had experience at other locations with, whatever the world's throwing at it, domestic disputes, different issues with parents where they don't want people to be able to see into the playground and see which kids are outside, what they're doing. The gates to the playground actually have an alarm system on them, so that they know if someone's coming in and out of the gates. So it's really a security concern for them. So if we just did, wrought iron with trees, it wasn't up to their standards. So they respectfully wanted us to ask that we maintain the opaque fence for those reasons. And like any of our properties around the state, we love landscaping. We love putting trees in, making things look good. I don't want a bare white fence when you pull into our property. So we're going to make sure, we have the trees shown on the site plan that I think will grow in nicely. And if we get there and we say, hey, we need to scatter some other trees on the site, or, we can absolutely do that if that's appropriate. Hopefully I'm not moving too quickly through these. Did want to confirm that there are staggered arrivals throughout the morning and the afternoon. There's a lot of factors at play depending on the age, the parents' schedules. So it's not a concern with the parking and the access to the site there. So they have their formula down with that. Happy to answer any other questions I haven't addressed.
Yep, Mr. Fox.
I guess I was just curious on the topic of the wrought iron fence. Is there a fence on the side facing the parking lot?
There's not. So the classrooms from the floor plan, they feed out into the Troy Center Drive side of it. So the kids would not be exiting to go to the playground from the parking lot side.
So I saw like a row of doors on the side of the parking lot. Maybe I misunderstood.
So there are,
the
so it's
rendering.
the way that they operate the classrooms. I think it's some of those other classrooms are the 6-month-old, the younger kids that aren't going out onto the playground or, aren't walking themselves out there. They also take into account the classroom placement and window placement based on, changing tables. And so they have to strategically locate the different age groups throughout the building for things that I would have never contemplated. But all of the classrooms that are on that Troy Center Drive side with the fencing are intended to allow the kids to come out of those doors and go to the playground. So there would not be kids coming out of those and going into the parking lot. I'm sure those are just emergency egress doors.
And would you be able to pull up the floor plan again? I guess, is there an objection to bringing the kids to the playground from the inside, through the inside hallway?
So I guess I should have asked that question of the learning experience of what their reasonings for that. I have to say that they did push back quite significantly. And the biggest thing that they kept coming back to was more of the emergency situation where the 5-year-old or 6-year-old runs and hits that crash bar on the door and goes out of the door, or it's a door that, is meant to go to the playground and they hit the exit button and go out of it. So it was really meant to keep kids from running into the road because the road is right there.
Ms. Malala Holly.
Thank you. Couple questions. You heard my question to Mr. Carlisle about, and then we talked about a opening in the fence. Have you considered the building ordinance and the code that we have in terms of, so what are your suggestions to make that happen, I guess?
Yeah, I think if you all felt strongly about providing some sort of access through the fence at that location, we could put a gate in there. Again, the door is intended to be for employees only. It requires a key fob to get into. So we could do it. One of the apprehensions in that conversation was confusing parents where they might park on the north end and start walking around that side to come in. And it's really meant to direct everyone to the parking lot side. And I understand the nature of the ordinance and being in this, kind of retail district. But it's in a parking lot behind an office building on Troy Center Drive. We're not right up on Big Beaver where, people are walking during lunchtime and going into restaurants and coming in and out of different retail establishments. We really are tucked in behind the PNC Tower there.
I understand. When I was taking a look at this, I'm also looking into, God forbid, when this building is not occupied and let's say there's a fire. From the town center drive, if the firefighters were to have been able to enter, now you haven't given them an access point to enter into the building. So that is where I am thinking about having a gate in that fence might at least give the opportunity to break it open and come into the building.
Yeah, so the fire department did review the plans, and I believe approved it from what I had heard. They did not have any issues with it. Again, the learning experience, it's a 20-year lease with options to go up to 30 years. So their minimal lease term is 20 years in that building. So it's purpose-built for their use. And if it did change into something else in the future, we would have to spend money to re-tenant the building and change, whether the configuration on the inside, remove the fence, remove the playground, frankly, if it wasn't another daycare facility. Certainly if, once we went in for building permits, the fire department had concerns with the locking doors and gates and things like that. There'd be a Knox box provided. There'd be ways for them to gain access to that. And not that a wrought iron fence as well, aluminum fence, if they needed to, would come down in a matter of seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lambert?
Just as a follow-up to the issue you were concerned with, I think based upon the comments that were made, I think many would, and I can't speak for everyone right now, but would prefer some type of a better entrance off of Town Center Drive, and I'm sure you can accomplish that with the appropriate security settings. And also the concern you had about parents being confused about the main entrance. Most people are going to be approaching from the south or the north, so with the appropriate signage, I think most parents or potential vendors would not be confused about the right entrance into the building. So that's just my comment. And
Yeah.
One question for you was the reason for the additional 1.5 feet that you need based upon the ordinance.
Yeah, so it wasn't meant to trigger the waiver situation, so I apologize for that. Really between the sidewalk and then the sidewalk surrounding the building, we wanted a little bit more grass so we can get some good landscaping, some good trees, and a little bit more of a green belt in there. We didn't want to push it further than that to compromise too much of the parking in the parking lot the way it is right now, but we felt that that was a good place to put the building, allow for proper amount of green space and parking. And then to your point with the entrance, if that's something that everyone's uncomfortable with, it doesn't meet the ordinance in your opinion, would be happy to look at putting a gate in, and then I can work with the learning experience and how they secure that. And if there's we need to put signage on the north and south saying parents enter, or once their kids sign up there, they would figure it out quite quickly. So we can look at putting a gate in that fence.
Okay, great, thank you.
Really quick, while we're on the topic of the primary entrance, I think because we talked about the spirit of the ordinance, the spirit of the ordinance is to have a primary entrance that's visible, usable for the public, and it does include pedestrians, and there are a lot of residences going up in that area within walking distance. We've approved, and they're building many right now as we speak, which are probably within a quarter of a mile. Even across the street, there's people who live there. So it is possible that people would walk their kids over, especially people who work from home and they want to get out and walk their kids and pick them up on foot. So I'm sort of the belief that it should actually be a usable entrance. I get daycares are tricky, people need to be buzzed in, but to the extent that you're going to have a door there, I don't see why, with cameras or whatnot, that, people could bring their kids to that entrance as well. So I do think that that entrance needs to be a usable entrance for the public. Not the public, but the customers, the people using the daycare.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I think the purpose of the ordinance was. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, so on the interior of the building, where the actual entrance is on the parking lot side, there's, for lack of a better term, a sally port where you go through one door, and you can't open that next door until you're buzzed in. We do not have that on the other entrance, and that would actually require us to reconfigure the restrooms that are right there. Actually eliminate a restroom that's right there. When we originally looked at this when we were building Bose, and we said, hey, based on the parking, based on what's here, what else can we put in this parking lot? Instantly, we're thinking, hey, retail's getting big bucks on Big Beaver. We want to put retail in. We looked at that. We designed, a concept of a building. The entrance was, like you said, facing Troy Center Drive, in the spirit of, everything else in the area up on Big Beaver. When we realized that this was a better use for the site and for our building, our office tower right next door, and really a better use for the community and a long-term tenant where it's not a retailer that's going in there for 3 or 4 years, and then we have to worry about them flipping. Frankly, we are not making a dollar on this building. They're very expensive to build, and they're just not currently right now with where construction costs are a good business opportunity for us. It really is an amenity to that building. Now that I can tell people, hey, you sign an office lease in this building, your kid's in the parking lot, you can park and drop your kid off and go into your office. That's what drew us to this. It really enhances the tower and Bose in the parking lot there. So our intention was to have that entrance on Troy Center Drive. Given the use where you don't have that retail traffic, people walking by going in to get a smoothie or getting lunch, we feel strongly that it's the only kind of customer-facing entrance should be on the parking lot side for security reasons. Obviously, everyone's hypersensitive to security at schools and daycare centers in today's day and age. The Learning Experience, I think, has done a great job laying out their formula across their entire platform. They've even in the last few years refined the prototype now that they're in this kind of rapid growth and trying to expand, frankly, globally. They've ironed out all these little details to make sure that they're efficient with their model and safe for the kids that are going there.
Okay, I appreciate you sharing that perspective
Yeah, no,
and giving the sort of the context.
I could add a few comments. This will just be a few. I don't want to hog it. Eliminating the entrance to that bathroom or toilet at the entrance off of, is it Town Center Drive? Is it?
Troy Center Drive.
Troy Center
Yeah.
Drive, okay. You could really keep that toilet there, just have the door on the other side, just like you have in the next, one next to it,
So the one next to it's internal to a classroom.
right? And the
where-
other one could be internal to that same classroom.
Yeah, I don't want to, so I do want to back up and say, we generally don't show floor plans at a site plan or this detailed of a floor plan at a site plan approval. From my experience, I could be wrong. I don't have anything to do with what the inside of that building's design looks like, and I don't want to tell the Learning Experience how to move things around. I think they have a very good model that they've been rolling out. I do think we can, again, put a gate in and do some things with the landscaping to make that entrance more prominent. Frankly, they're going to like the visibility of it if it looks a little bit more prominent. People driving by, they see their signage there.
Sure.
But I really think there's a line between meeting the ordinance when people are driving by, and it doesn't raise the question of, well, how do they not get it? Be required to put a door there, and then meeting the use that's going to be here for hopefully the next 20 to 30 years.
That said, it's just, okay, they can figure out the internal functionality, but I would like to see a buzz door so that people across the street coming from the apartment complex, they could walk over and come in that door.
Okay.
A gate would be a smart thing for me because I don't want to put a block. If kids are coming out of the north classrooms and they're running and they could go, they could run to their left coming out that door and hit a fence. Oh, oops, now what? I want to keep that walkway open.
Yeah.
I don't want to see a block there. So I would think some kind of a gate in that. Now, is it wrought iron? Really wrought iron? Or is it aluminum?
It's an aluminum wrought iron product. Yeah.
I would hope it's aluminum because wrought iron, I see that Jewish cemetery on 14.
Falling
They are
apart. I know
always,
exactly what you're talking about.
they're always sandblasting that and painting it, I swear,
this
every
would
5
be
years.
aluminum, corrosion resistant, again,
Okay.
we don't want anything falling apart or looking bad.
That's enough right now. I got other thing, but go ahead.
I think Mr. Tagle wanted to say it.
The doors that are leading out of the classrooms behind the fence that we're talking about, those are required by the Daycare Rules of Michigan. It's an exit requirement.
Correct.
Help me understand why the central corridor couldn't be used to take the kids from the classrooms out to the playground. It's not those doors aren't necessarily, the purpose for those doors are to give the kids an immediate exit out of the building in the case of an emergency. So what's wrong with using the internal corridor? The doors have to stay, it's a requirement.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm getting at is, I'm not so sure that the fence is really valid. Because what your explanation was, is that's the route, the circulation route, the kids are gonna leave the classroom,
Yeah.
through the emergency exit, go down, and I don't even know, what is the distance between the fence and the building?
It's a 5-foot walk or 6 feet wide, 6.5 feet wide.
Okay, so the door's gonna swing into that 3 feet, you know, and you've got 20 kids,
Yeah.
12 kids, you know, so, again, the whole idea is, I'd like to understand why that central corridor couldn't be the circulation path to the playground.
Yeah, so I do know that they have staggered times that they're going in and out of the classrooms. Again, those classrooms that are more designated towards infant, younger kids, and this is me from my understanding of it, whether it's they're having nap time in one classroom, they're eating lunch in another classroom, it's meant to give them an optionality to, if the infants are sleeping in the room across the hall, they're not going into the hallway, creating a commotion when there's 20 kids going out to recess. They're going out that exterior door and directly to the playground. Again, I didn't get deep into the weeds on the interior layout of the building with TLE. This is something that they've refined, thoroughly.
The only reason I bring it up is it affects the outside of the building. It
Yeah,
affects
no,
the major topic that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And I see a solution that would take care of what our concerns are
Yeah.
in that internal corridor.
So I think it would not address the issue of, if the fire alarm goes off and the kids go dumping out into the street with our proximity to the street there. That was the major concern from TLE is, they run out and you can see from the rendering right here, it's facing the road right there. And so the original intention was to be able to corral everyone, make sure that the teachers and the caretakers are there to actually, wrangle all of the kids and get them to their assembly points and get them out of the building safely.
Would a dense hedge do the same thing for preventing the kids from running out into the street?
It could do the same thing. Could you have a kid dive into the hedge? I mean, seriously, yeah. If the fire alarm's going off and there's a fire in the building,
If I was a 6-year-old, would I want to climb that fence maybe?
you might.
So yeah, we could come up with the what ifs, but
Absolutely.
my point is, I'm trying to find a compromise here between the concerns that we have about putting a fence in the front of the building and other ways to get the kids from their classrooms
Yeah.
out to we've done a number of daycares in our office. I get it. There's nap time for certain age kids, and there's older kids that don't take the nap time at the same
Yeah.
time. It seems to work.
Yeah.
You've got doors on every classroom off that main corridor, I just am not yet convinced that the best solution is that wrought iron fence along the frontage of the building.
Yeah, and I do want to reiterate, that's why we went with a more decorative, tasteful fence and the lower height of the 4 feet, so that it did not jump out at you going by. But I completely understand that it's not something that's normally seen in this area. If we're up, on Big Beaver and there's people walking to lunch and now you have a whole area fenced off, completely understand it. I think for this use in the location where it is, in my mind, it is a different situation than being up on Big Beaver there.
I don't know if the comment was support of it or removal of it.
No, I'm saying we went with the decorative fence so that when you're driving by, it's attractive or more attractive than having us asking for the white opaque fence along the entirety of the building.
Oh my gosh, we're not talking about a fence. We're talking about an alternate to the fence.
Yeah,
Whether it's landscaping or some other means, if the concern is having a child that the supervision, the teachers cannot control the child in an emergency, they decide to dart out the door. I get that, but there are other means other than a fence to keep them from running out into Town Center Drive. That's my comment.
yeah,
on that.
okay.
Mr. Savana, could I ask you to explain a little bit the process about the fence, since it has to go to the building Board of Appeals? So if we were to decide, let's say we approved it with the condition that they can't do the fence, can they then go get approval for the fence and get the fence? Who really has the final say on the fence?
Wow, what a great question. I'm glad Alan's here. I would say I'll take the first bite at the apple here. I think there's two issues we're talking about, just to be clear. One is the fence in your front yard. that requires a variance, not from the zoning board of appeals, but from the building code board of appeals.
Right.
The other issue is an entrance, a primary entrance on the road, facing the right of way. So if we look at, and I'll get back to you.
Yep.
But this is just, I want to be clear here. So this, the representative of the applicant has verbalized to us that the most drop-offs are gonna be on the parking lot side. So you see the entrance sign above the door, canopy above the door with window on each side. That's primary entrance. And then on the street side, it's very similar. It's got the sign, it's got a canopy, it's got the door, it's got windows. So it's, I mean, to your point, Madam Chair, if they had people who, and there's lots of residential within a reasonable walking distance, either existing or proposed or under construction right now. So it is reasonable to speculate that people would want to walk in that door and not go around to the parking lot side where it's more uncomfortable because there's lots of cars. So that is reasonable. It's an ordinance requirement. It's not whether the planning commission is comfortable or uncomfortable with it. It is a requirement. It's a shall have a primary entrance. I think the planning commission seems, I don't want to speak for anybody, but seems you're willing to accept the, vehicles dropping off on one side and the potential for people to deliver kids on the other side. That seems reasonable. 2 primary entrances, they've done a nice job of making them complementary. But if they don't comply, in my opinion, and they fence it or they gate that needs a variance from the zoning board of appeals, in my opinion. And I haven't vetted this, but I'm hoping for a
Wait, did you say the zoning board of appeals?
So,
About the building.
well, no, the zoning ordinance requires a primary entrance. If that's fenced, that's not a primary entrance, that's not even an entrance. That needs a variance from the zoning board of appeals, way higher standards than the building code board of appeals. I would offer, not that anyone asked me, that this would not meet practical difficulty. They're not going to be successful with variance. What I really want to encourage this team is to come up with a way, a reasonable way to comply with that requirement of the ordinance. That needs to be an entrance that people, whether they have a card or not, can access that door. Or you need a variance. Getting back to the fence, even if they give us the entrance that the ordinance requires and they still have the fence, that needs a variance from the building code board of appeals, because the fence provisions are a separate ordinance and not in the zoning ordinance. And in Troy, the variances are sought from the building code board of appeals. So if the planning commission were to just thinking aloud, were to approve this, it would be subject to them getting a variance from the building code board of appeals. I think what you asked is, had they not even showed us the fence and they just showed us the building, we approved it and then they applied for a fence. Thinking aloud, I guess the building code board of appeals would consider the application for a fence variance. But Kajoyan's been in their client, they're here in good faith. I mean, this is what they want to do. They want a fence. They're telling us they want a fence. They know that they need a variance from the building code board of appeals. I think I answered your question.
I mean, you did, but it almost made it sound like had they not put the fence on, they came, we approved it, then they went to the building board of appeals and gotten the fence and closed off the entrance. Unless one of us drove by and thought, wait, what the heck? They blocked the entrance.
But so that's, again, 2 issues. One is that they put a fence up.
Yeah.
The other is they would have blocked the entrance and they would have eliminated the primary entrance. That would have been a zoning ordinance violation.
Okay.
How did I do, Alan?
I think that's, everything Brent said is correct.
All right.
But again,
So I hope, so I'm sure we have questions now. Mr. Feza.
Just a clarifying question, Brent. So is a gate that has limited access, like a key card, employee only, is a gate a violation of the ordinance?
in my opinion, it is. I think it's reasonable to, because of the use inside the building. I mean, I heard him say that one of the concerns is a kid hitting the bar and opening the door. Well, that could happen on the other side, on the parking lot side too, and there's no fence there. So I think there's a reasonable solution here to eliminate one of the variances. I think it's right there. I don't want to design it for them, but there's the vestibule where you got to buzz, and there's ways to get there that are reasonable.
And you could also do a fence What about a fence with a gate, but that anyone can open it, but maybe not a child? I mean, is that,
We're really getting nuanced here, and I just remind the Planning Commission that we live in a copycat world and a what-about world, whataboutism world. And this is a big deal, because the next person it's a research office, they're gonna want to have security, and they're gonna want to have a fence. And before you know it, there's gonna be fences everywhere. And that flies in the face of what we're trying to accomplish in this district.
okay, thank you. Mr. Fox?
Yeah, I think more of a comment for the applicant, because I don't want to keep you stuck up here at the podium the whole time we discuss, but I guess to me, I would personally want to postpone this. I wouldn't want to deny it, because I think it is a very important use that we need in Troy, we need in Southeast Michigan. Like, having more childcare facilities, absolutely phenomenal. I think what I'm gathering by listening to the other planning commissioners, as well as Mr. Salvadon, is that, you know, the entrance on Troy Center Drive has got to be figured out. It's got to be a primary entrance that is accessible in order to comply with the zoning ordinance. And that's personally where I'm at. I think it would be remiss to not have that opportunity for residents within walking distance to be able to walk up to that entrance. I think that is a market that is somewhat being neglected in the way that it's currently designed, and I think that would end up being an advantage to both your client as well as comply with our ordinance.
Okay, I was just gonna say, let's have our comments be questions for the applicant, because I don't want to turn this into a discussion. I'd like the applicant we'll ask the questions, then we'll let him sit down, then we'll turn it back, have a resolution, and have discussion. So do you guys have questions for the applicant? Okay. Go ahead.
Ladies first.
Let Mr. Biegner go.
Yeah, go
I've
ahead.
had my, at least one question opportunity.
I think you guys have heard about the west side enough entrance. But the other thing I would say is I'd like to see more of a buffer. To have a 6-foot section for me scares me. Safety's the whole thing. To have 6 feet and then a sidewalk and a street that's pretty well driven scares me. I'd like to see the building pushed back a little bit, but I'm gonna go a different direction. How many staff are you guys shooting for?
I want to say it's about 20, but I'd have to look at.
Okay. How many classrooms?
I'd have to look at that as well.
It was 11.
11 classrooms.
11? Okay. So with somewhere around 20 staff, is 23 parking spaces enough?
We have 40 parking spaces
Oh,
provided.
it's 40? I
within
thought I
the
heard
parcel.
23.
I'm not sure where the 23 came from. 23 is the requirement of the ordinance? Or is that where that came from?
There's 23 on your site plan, there's 23 required by ordinance.
Good evening, John Hauser with PEA Group.
Just make sure you sign in,
I will,
please. Thank you.
yes. 23 was what was required per the code, so we listed that as 23 required, but then if you look down below, TLE wanted for sure 40. They always want 40 at all their locations in Southeast Michigan. With that blue box, that would be the site condominium, we've got 42. So,
I like that. 23 is not enough for you guys. 40 is the number, in my opinion.
Mr.
good for
Carlisle,
you.
do you have a picture of that to show us where those 40 spots are?
I guess it's on the site plan, but that's not what it was shown, but it doesn't matter, they meet the ordinance requirements.
yeah,
Okay. So that shows all 40 spots?
all 42 spots, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we can count.
Sometimes I count them, and I didn't for this one. Ms. Malala Holly?
Thank you. My one other question is addressing the transparency on the south side, I believe, where you're
Correct.
deficient.
Yes.
What's another window? What are you thinking?
So again, it went back to asking for the opaque fence around the playground. Kind of canceled out you're not going to drive by and see that elevation because of that 6-foot fence. And this just went to what's internal to the building and where windows made sense. If it were asked of us tonight to increase that by 30%, we'll figure out a way to do that. And, you know, whether it's windows overhead of the ones that are existing there, moving the canopies up. You know, again, it's just the layout of the building. They have, you know, on that side of the building, some of the younger kids' rooms where there's changing tables and different things. If there's a window that goes up and we can frost it, we'll get creative. So if we need to meet that, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I've got one.
Okay, go ahead.
So I was looking at the external, because I won't bother with the internals,
Yeah.
external building, the appearance, the materials being used. you know, we got right next door to us a children's hospital. That looks like a children's hospital. This could be, I don't know, any kind of store. Could be a place selling blue jeans for all I know. It just doesn't look fun. It should, to me, it should show outside a little bit of what's inside. It doesn't have to be, you know, expansive, but just hardy board everywhere, and just a little brick at the bottom. Seems like it's really missing an opportunity, both for identity and for the whole idea of that type of business is fun.
So to address that, we actually had columns coming down from the canopy that you see at the main entrance there with ABC 123 multicolored design.
Nice.
That's TLE's staple. They have characters, an elephant, a giraffe, different things that are actually critical to their curriculum, and they make stuffed animals of them. So those were included in there originally. The canopies were TLE's orange, which is their other kind of signature color.
Nice.
We were asked to make the building a little bit more subdued because of the area that we're in, to complement the office tower and the Bose building next door. So the blue canopies that you see on the building match the blue accents on the PNC tower, as well as some blue accents going on the Bose building. So initially this was TLE's orange, as well as the kind of fun ABC 123
I don't see any hardy board on the PNC building.
I think the hardy board's a lot more attractive than some of the facades on the PNC building.
Really? Isn't it stonework?
It's a lot of ACM panels, metal louvered panels. It's, I think, almost entirely ACM and glass.
Really? Okay. Well, that said,
There is maybe on the Ruth Chris
I would like to
entrance
go
some
back to the fun stuff that they originally proposed.
Okay.
And utilize materials that are a little more similar to the other developments you've done on Big Beaver. Some stonework, which is really nice along Big Beaver. I would, you know, lift it up a notch material-wise, but also a notch fun-wise. What you described of what they originally had suits my need. I could also let them look at the facades at Adventure Island at Universal.
Okay.
Those are fun entrances. My brother happened to design those. But that's the one I'm familiar with because I've seen it a lot. I was there.
Okay.
But, you know, make it fun. You know, this is, they're not going to the office, these kids.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I will say, again, there's a balance that we're trying to accomplish between, you know, fitting the environment that we're going into, the costs associated. These are incredibly expensive to build. When I tell you we're not making $1 on these, we're not making $1 on these. We're putting these in our office parks. In fact, the Farmington Hills one, we're probably taking a good loss on it, but it helps the overall park, it helps the community. It's a great use. So we're trying to balance the economies of what types of materials, also what's more weather, you know, resistant, and what's going to look good in 20 years. So
No, those are all important ideas.
completely hear you. I think we could tweak the colors back up in some variation.
Universal has the Florida sun on them all the time.
Yeah.
They've solved it. I think you can utilize materials that make it more fun. Anyway, throw that in there. That's all I got.
Appreciate
Mr.
it.
Tagle?
Is this a prototype design by this organization?
So it's slightly different. They use, in most of their locations outside of Michigan, they use EFIS in place of the hardy board. In our climate, EFIS is not, a material that they like to use. So that's where they're going to hardy board. We're using a less attractive material in our Farmington Hills product.
Less attractive?
Less attractive than the hardy board. It's almost like an EFIS material where it's a consistent texture throughout. I personally think the hardy board is a little bit better than that. Again, it's meant to fit in with the surroundings where it was a little bit of a muted design, but still complementing, the architecture around it with those accents, colors, and.
Well, I support Mr. Krantz' comments. I look at that building and it doesn't say daycare at all. It doesn't say children-friendly, it doesn't say fun.
Yeah.
I get it. A lot of people will say, oh, good design is expensive. It doesn't have to be. There are ways to make something attractive. As far as compatibility, we have, how many parking spaces? 1,200 parking spaces separating these buildings.
Yeah.
Compatibility, you've got a 20 or 30 PNC tower. Bose is another type of animal building type. So compatibility, I would challenge you not to try to say, oh, well, we're going to try to blend in or play off of colors that might be there. This is an opportunity to really be an attractive and fun place, eye-catching, in my opinion. I mean, Tom mentioned the hospital, the children's
Yeah.
hospital. I mean,
I would love to see that, and we were actually told the opposite, and told to mute the colors. We were respectfully. There was orange on the building, there were the colorful columns. Our location in Farmington Hills has yellow facade panels, has the letters and the numbers, the orange accent panels. It's meant to be more attractive for kids coming in. So with all due respect, that is what I was told to do, is to take the color off the building and to fit in with the surrounding buildings with the blue. So, or you didn't say the blue, but fit in with the surrounding buildings.
I would encourage you as a petitioner and
We will go back to the
developer
drawing
on this
board.
project, that you come to this project, that's something that's going to sell the project to the community, to
Yeah.
the moms and dads that are want to bring little Bobby to this place and feel like, hey, this is going to be a great place for him or for her. So that, because right now, if this was it, I would say absolutely not. I could not approve this at all. For other than, for some of the reasons we already talked about, especially just the look of this building. It doesn't say daycare to me. Even the massing of the building, I don't even understand what's the step parapet wall for. I mean, it just, I don't know. There's just so much about this building that's, to me, it looks dated already, and you haven't even built it.
Concur.
Mr. Sabanon, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just to Chris's point, we did, one of the first renditions we saw did have some of those elements that we talked about. It was more, it looked more, some of those elements looked more like a daycare. Someone here mentioned the balance between compatibility and uniqueness of the use. And I think I said something to the effect of, we don't vote, but it seems like maybe this, I don't know if this would be well received. But, first time for everything that I'm wrong, right? But I want to make sure if it's, I heard someone mention the word postponement, if that's the direction we're going in, is there a consensus? I mean, I've heard too, but I just, so that the applicant leaves here with marching orders, is that a consensus of the planning commissions? I think that's it. Yes, I'd like to ask that.
Well,
Could we-
I mean, I think that'll be part of our discussion.
Could we discuss the fence and the gate? So I had previously, when we talked about it, mentioned we were willing to put the gate in, and if there's a requirement for it to not lock so that it could be accessed, I'd like to discuss that further, and just see kind of what the expectations are from the commission, and just so we can flush that out with TLE and come back prepared to meet those expectations.
Okay, I think that we're going to turn it to the planning commission for discussion,
Great.
so we can kind of decide, and then it will be appropriate to bring you back up if you want to
Great.
discuss it a little bit. I did have one question before
Yeah,
you sit down, because you mentioned it a couple times. I can appreciate that you're not making money off the building, and you even referred to it as an amenity for PNC and the Bose building, but is it going to be limited to those?
No, there will be no preference given.
No preference.
It's its own business.
Okay.
It's just what drew TLE to this site, amongst others in Troy that they were exploring, was the fact that you have a 550,000 square foot office building in the parking lot, and then the 76,000 square foot Bose building as well. So having that traffic built into the site, they're like, oh wow, this is great. You have people that are coming in and can take their kids there. It's around 163, 168 kids. At the facility, so it's not intended to be for this, and it's not like we're going to say, hey, 50% of it's for our buildings. It's not our business to operate, so it's a learning experience.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yeah,
confirm
no,
that.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you
All right,
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so as we all remember, we're going to try to put a resolution out there, and it will go either way. Remember, and then if we start discussing something, every time we want to decide on something, we have to keep amending. So whoever proposes the resolution, just keep in mind the variances that they're seeking, like the parking deficiency, the waive the loading space requirement, the transparency, and the 10 to 11 and a half feet. Because if we can get that into the initial one, then we don't have to keep making like other resolutions along the way, at least for those that we already know. And then we'll open it up for discussion. Mr. Lambert.
Before we go into deliberations, and
Yep.
even though it's not a public hearing, I don't know if you want to take any public comments on
Yes,
this, so.
Mr. Lambert, thank you for the reminder. Is anyone here to, if anyone's here to speak on this item, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Okay, I actually wasn't going to plan on talking this because I didn't really think the discussion was going to get this far, but given how many zoning ordinances are being broken here. But just a thought, Mr. Sabanat pointed out, one of my comments as I wrote as I was listening to the conversation and having read the documents, I am concerned as a resident about when creating these exceptions, because to Mr. Sabanat's point, what, and this is maybe a question for the lawyer as well, is what does that open the city of Troy open, what does that open us up to in the future? Does it obligate us either into litigation about why we did yes to this one and no to this one? I mean, Troy has long-standing rules against fences, even in neighborhood nodes that have dogs and kids. So, you know, if they can't do this without a fence, then maybe this isn't the place. I appreciate the fact that Troy, I love the fact that everybody knows we need more daycare and it seems like a great thing, but if we can't do it without the zoning ordinances, i.e. the fences, then maybe this isn't the location for this particular build. And then I was also concerned that when I was reading the documents, okay, so we're short 1,287 spaces. I read that that was partially due to the fact that PNC is not completely leased out. And so is there a study that somehow says if they do, or is the city just betting on the fact that they're never going to be able to lease that whole building? And I wish there'd be some discussion about what that would mean to the negative 1,287 spaces as zoning ordinances would require. Sorry,
Thank you.
I usually have it prepared better.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak on this? Okay, seeing no one, we're going to turn it back to our discussion.
So
Mr. Fox?
I took some notes. I'm going to take a swing at the motion. Obviously, feel free to add anything that I'm missing, because I think I am missing something, but I can't remember what it was. I would like to make a motion to postpone this item. There it is, postpone. Be resolved, the preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed The Learning Center, east side of Troy Center, south of Big Beaver, 755 West Big Beaver, PIN 88-20-28-104-002, Section 28, presently zoned BB, Big Beaver zoning district, approximately 0.91 acres in size, be postponed for the applicant to make the following considerations. That a primary commercial entrance be added to the frontage of the building on Troy Center Drive. Transparency on the southern side of the building be brought into 30% compliance. That the facade of the building be redesigned to explore more unorthodox and childlike elements while maintaining consistency with existing campus buildings. And then I wasn't sure how it needed to be worded on the parking, so maybe I'll just stop with those three and then we can add as we go.
I don't know why did I say there was a parking deficiency? Because I do have it written down and there is no
complies.
parking
It
deficiency.
complies,
I
yeah,
don't
I
know,
think it does
so if I
comply.
said it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay, do we have a second to that motion? It's
Second.
Malala Holly. Oh, sorry, Dave.
The one wording that you did with the appearance of the outside of the building, you say, in relation to the other buildings, I'd say, I would strike that because we don't want it necessarily in relation to an office building. We
Don't
want
worry
a
about all that.
A kids center, yeah, that's my thought.
Well, okay, but I mean, I think that goes to, part of the discussion, because I personally don't agree with the part about looking like having the animals and all that, so, and the colors. So, I don't know how specific we want to be on the, because we haven't really hashed consider anyway, So,
Could I ask a question on that? Is it not enough because you're considering that?
There needs to be a buffer. I've worked with kids for 21 years of my life.
oh yeah.
Sorry, just to be clear, it's the 11 and a half feet from the right-of-way, so there's still another 12 to 14 feet until you're at the road. So that's the right-of-way from the lot in. So there is still a larger buffer there. Just
Thank you for that clarification.
Well, and I think out of interest of not, taking pens and writing exactly what the applicant to do, would potentially an amendment to the motion worded along the lines of the applicant reconsider safety features along the frontage with Troy Center Drive, because that would kind of encompass the fence, that would encompass the build-to line, it would kind of encompass, just have the request that the applicant reassess that entire frontage and kind of explain like.
Listen, I'm not sure which ones apply to that resolution.
Of course. So the three that have been put into the original motion would be that a primary commercial entrance be added to the frontage of the building on Troy Center Drive. Transparency on the southern side of the building be brought into compliance, 30%. And a redesigning of the facade to explore more unorthodox and childlike elements while maintaining consistency with existing campus buildings. I believe the discussion was to potentially add a fourth communication to the applicant, because these aren't conditions, these are just giving direction to the applicant regarding safety measures along.
Could you read your item with regards to the appearance of the building?
Absolutely. So the third condition that I had on the original motion was to redesign the facade to explore more unorthodox and childlike elements while maintaining consistency with existing campus buildings. And I know that there was a question brought up by Mr. Krent about whether we wanted to keep the latter half of that direction.
Yeah, and I guess if you could tell me what your intent was with the word unorthodox.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not a design person. Unorthodox, I hear like the pillars with the building blocks, like that's unorthodox. Like you don't see that on a lot of
Elephants.
You might see it on a lot of like children's themed buildings,
Colors.
but yeah.
I like where you're going with that.
I think the word unorthodox, you're very correct in that it is vague, in that I don't even necessarily know how to word it in a design sense, how to explain it. That's why I also threw in like the childlike as to kind of provide guidance along those lines. But you're very right. It is a very unorthodox way for me to word it.
Mr. Lambert.
I was going to comment that unorthodox in one person's eyes is orthodox in another.
Yes.
So I assume what that direction would be to the applicant would be maybe using more of their corporate theme that the franchisee normally uses on their building front, as opposed to what our planning people said they didn't like or didn't think fit, so.
Ms. Malala Holly.
Yeah, I was about to say that what is unorthodox for me could be orthodox for another person. So it's the same statement that I'm reiterating. But on the other hand, yes, the corporate colors definitely might be something, but definitely need some kind of direction to them to make it less muted. It shouldn't be this muted for a daycare. I mean, a child could potentially be there for 6 years. From 3 months or 2 months age all the way up to 6 years. Let's make it a brighter spot for them. So less muted. It's too muted right now.
Okay. So, Ms. Sarnicki, are you clear on, are we moving on? You've got your resolution.
I have 4 reasons to postpone. Whether you want to use orthodox or unorthodox, I will repeat in my minutes what Mr. Fox said.
I think the applicant is hearing, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the applicant is hearing what we're saying in regards to unorthodox. I think they'll put together that we mean, bring in more of the building blocks and the elephants and all of the fun stuff. I didn't think I'd ever say that in a planning commission meeting, but anyway, I think I will say the original motion did only have the 3 requirements. There is the 4th outstanding, which would specifically be reassessing the frontage on Troy Center Drive to look at safety features. as well as design features along with the, primary entrance. So I don't know if like a friendly amendment is something that we're able to do per Robert's rules, where as long as the motion and the person who seconded are all right with making a change, we can just do that, or if we would need to hold a vote on an amendment to add that fourth condition.
This is a motion to postpone. You don't really need
Okay.
stringent reasons for a motion to postpone, so just
Very much
clarify
appreciate that,
is
Mr.
sufficient.
Monsney. Thank you very much. So yeah, at that point, are there any other topics, that we wanted to talk about before moving on the motion?
Just, Madam Chair?
Yes,
Just a
Mr.
quick
Lambert.
question either for Mr. Motstein or Mr. Savidan. If the planning commission's direction apparently is that we don't want a fence out there to comply with what the Big Beaver zoning ordinance requires, but if we were to pass it and he or she or whoever the applicant is were to still go to the Building Code Board of Appeals, could they get a fence even though we stipulated that there would be no fence there?
So they would potentially keep the landscaping, but also put a fence.
I would say if the planning commission says no fence, I don't think the Building Code Board of Appeals would have authority to overrule the planning commission.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
clarification.
Better put no fence in there.
So, okay, so we talked about a few things. One of my thoughts is that, I know Mr. Buechner said that a kid can get through any hedge, but I think that, and maybe Mr. Tagle is more of an expert, but I think if you have a pretty thick and tall enough, very tight hedge, a kid cannot get through it. So I do think there's ways around that. And I do feel pretty strongly that we need to follow our zoning, follow the zoning ordinance and not have that fencing around.
I agree.
As for the appearance of the building, I guess maybe I'm alone on this, but for me, it's sort of the example of McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's on Big Beaver. We don't allow a typical looking McDonald's that you might see on Rochester Road on Big Beaver. It has to look totally different. Or go to Europe or Google, McDonald's in Berlin or Paris. They do not look like a typical McDonald's because it has to meet the standards of where you're at. And so to me, the corporate colors and the look with the blocks and the elephants and to me, that does not fit the Big Beaver standards, in my opinion. Not at all. Yes, Mr. Carlett?
I think it's important to give the applicant clear direction, especially with the design issue. This is an example of what they showed us previously. And in reviewing it and understanding this planning commission and some of the design standards, we did direct the applicant that we didn't think this was the type of look that the planning commission would want to see on Big Beaver. That doesn't mean that we discourage creativity. I think the Children's Hospital is a great example of a fun building that yet meets the higher design standards on Big Beaver. So if this is their corporate design typically, if this is the direction you want the applicant to go in, I think it's okay to have that discussion, but we did not feel like this is the type of design that the planning commission really would meet the standards along the Big Beaver corridor. So that's the direction we gave the applicant. So it is true that we did say, we think you need to do something a little higher than this, and they came back with what they had. But if this is the direction where the planning commission wants to go, I think you should clarify that to the applicant tonight.
Well, I guess where I was going with it is I am one vote, okay, but I would not go in that direction. I would go in the direction, and you gave a good example of the Children's Hospital. It screams children fun, but it has a sort of sense of, it's unique, it has its character, but it fits the design standards of Big Beaver, in my opinion. So I'd like to see those types of changes. Mr. Tinkle.
Just a thought to throw out to the petitioner. This is a four-sided building. If we're concerned with what it looks like on the corporate drive side and on the north and south ends, that could be a little bit more subdued. The main entrance side, maybe where you want pop the color or the fun or the interest on that, because that's the main entrance for the families or the parents and children. So that's just a thought, that maybe there's a middle ground here where we can come up with a respectful-looking building, well, all around, but maybe a little bit more fun on the backside and a little less childlike on the street side.
I mean, I think that that's a nice compromise. I mean, on the parking lot side, when the kids walk in, if they want to see the elephants in the blocks.
Yeah, because the kids aren't going to see it here. They're in the,
Right,
you know.
but I would not want to see that on the Town Center Drive side.
I think, much to Mr. Tagle's point, I think there is a middle ground between creative and fun for kids as well as consistent with, you know, kind of the Big Beaver node as in general, but then also just the general buildings on the campus. I mean, we've had some really good designs come in from this applicant in the past, you know, on Big Beaver, we've had some great designs come in. So I think a balance can absolutely be struck between whimsy and fitting in.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Ms. Malala Holly.
I agree with Mr. Tagle's idea that we could get that compromise. We could get that compromise by the applicant. I do not like that 1, 2, 3, 4 or the A, B, C, D, that pillar. No, that's not the kind of less muted design I was hoping. No, that's not the one, but yeah, some kind of a compromise so that the applicant knows where we are heading. Definitely not what this one looked. This is too industrial, according to me, and very, very boxy, very.
I think one of the things that's maybe a little bit, for me personally, a little bit of, I don't want to say upsetting, that's too strong a word, but it's that tiered or that stepped parapet wall that really, I don't know what it's doing. I get the center section is high saying this is the entrance, but I don't understand why it just, I think a simple, single level parapet wall, and if you want to highlight an entrance, you know, pop up a portion of it, but it just, it almost reminds me of something that you would see on a movie set, you know, it's like a false front, you know, going down, you know, the street, but that's mine.
Okay.
Sorry.
More discussion.
Well, we went to Universal Studios and we went to the movie sets too. I think we covered it all. I'm done, thanks.
I am under the impression that the applicant kind of understands what we're looking for, is we're looking for, you know, a touch of whimsy while balancing it with, you know, the look of Big Beaver District. I think the big points were pretty straightforward on, you know, get the transparency up on the south side. We all want to see a primary entrance. None of us seem all right with a fence, / you know, just kind of reassess safety as a whole, potentially the setbacks. So at the risk of, you know, making sure that we don't, you know, beat around the bush and talk around, if there isn't anything else that we wanted to make sure we highlighted, I think we're all in agreement to some extent.
Yep.
Yes, please come up and make sure you understood, yeah.
Yeah, just for clarification, so I completely understand the fence along Choice Center Drive. We will have to go back in front of the building Board of Appeals for the fence around the playground, if I'm not mistaken. So I just want to make sure everyone is comfortable with that, comfortable with it being a white opaque fence, which is, you know, more residential in nature. Just want to make sure that that won't be an issue at the next meeting for the playground area.
Well, I think we're
in theory,
fine
we
with the
remove the
opaque
other
fence, but you did say you're going to put some landscaping.
Yeah, no, we'll make sure it looks
Yeah,
appropriate
okay.
and it looks like it's on a commercial site like it is. It's not in someone's
Yeah.
backyard, but I just want to make sure we're good with that.
And if you could also, when you do the 3D renderings, show a little bit of context with the surrounding buildings,
Yeah.
particularly the PNC and the Bose building. And so there is a requirement that it be compatible. I know there was some discussion, you know, and you tried to match the colors and I can appreciate that. I don't know so much that it has to attract or match colors, but match sort of the standard.
Yeah.
You know, and I get it, you're not gonna do a whole brick daycare, no worries. Like, it doesn't have to cost, but just the look, you know, you just want it to look like a Big Beaver District type building,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
so.
Understand that. We'll take these notes and bring it back. I also want to say I did not mean to throw Ben and Brent under the bus, so I apologize for that. I do value your input, so I just wanted to say that publicly, that they did not lead it. We designed this building, so we got some feedback, which we value, and this is what we designed.
I
so.
think we understood what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, and it made sense.
No, but I
It
didn't
made
want it to come
total
off that
sense.
way. So we will go back to the drawing board on this and be back in front of you hopefully soon, because we're eager to get this building up and
For sure,
have
for sure.
somewhere for the kids to go. So thank you very much
Okay.
for your time. Appreciate it.
So we're, there's still a motion on the floor. We haven't voted on it yet. So is there any other discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Vote.
This is a vote to postpone. Okay.
Mr. Krant.
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly.
Yes.
Ms. Parakis.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Biekner.
Yes.
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so moving on to our next item. It's the zoning ordinance text amendment for the North Troy zoning district. So we've received this item actually in our email a little time ago, and it's in the agenda packet, so hopefully everyone had a chance to review it, and Mr. Carlisle is going to present it.
Yes, thank you. I was not going to go line by line, detail by detail. We're still higher level at this point, so looking for feedback from the Planning Commission. So I'm just going to kind of highlight a few key points and then be open for further discussion and questions. So just a little background, we had met recently with the Planning Commission to discuss the potential zoning amendments to North Troy. This has been a long-term discussion that we've had with the Planning Commission. We have drafted the North Troy mixed-use district really to what I would say implement the already outstanding master plan recommendations for this particular area. Talking about a redevelopment, reinvestment, and adaptive reuse of what we now see as kind of more of an aging commercial and office type area, and kind of bring vibrancy and life to it. Because as we noted, currently there are, 5 or 6 different zoning districts that kind of cover this area, and so it gets complex and confusing. So what we're proposing, and I apologize for the poor graphics, but this is the best I can do, and if this goes further, I'll make sure it's a lot more cleaner and looks a lot better. But essentially establishing 2 districts within the North Troy area. And the first is that North Troy core area, which is that red area. It's intended to be the highest intensity mixed use area of the 2. It's intended for employment, residential, retail, service, lodging, civic, and open space uses. It emphasizes compact, walkable development, placemaking, public spaces, and active mixed-use forms. Again, all in line with the current master plan for this particular area. The outer blue area is the perimeter area, and it's supposed to be a lower intensity transitional type area from the core, which is more intense, to some of the neighborhoods in the surrounding area outside the periphery. It's intended for low to medium mixed use, office, residential, and supporting commercial development. Its height, density, and site intensity is to be a transition to the lower intensity areas. Just in general, in the North Troy area for permitted special land uses, it does allow a broad mix of uses, including multifamily residential, office, medical uses, retail, restaurants, etc. So it's a wide variety of uses in the area. The difference is that the core area really focuses on more intensive uses. We propose allowing multiple family up to 14 stories. There is an existing either 14 or 16-story building already in the area, so it would be consistent with what's there, as well as retail, offices, and mixed use. Again, the perimeter area would be a lower intense and transitional development. It would allow attached multifamily, retail, office, mixed use, etc. The difference in uses for the two are kind of outlined in the table in front of you. The core would not allow for one family attached. So the townhomes that we're used to seeing, or the triplexes, quads, those would not be permitted in the core area because those are really more of a transitional land use, et cetera. However, large multifamily up to 14 stories would be permitted in the core use, but not permitted in the perimeter section. Retail large format would be a special use in the core area, but not permitted in the permitted. We do have a definition of large scale retail. I believe it's 10,000 square feet or above is what would constitute a large scale retail. Conference, meeting, and banquet facilities permitted in the core, special use in the perimeter. More accessory uses or component uses to residential uses such as kennels and daycare would be in a permitted use in the perimeter, not allowed in the core. Drive-ups or drive-throughs would be a special use in the perimeter, not allowed in the core. Director Savana and I went back and forth about drive-through uses and if they should be allowed or not allowed in this district. Certainly something that we're open for discussion, but as drafted right now, it's a special use in the perimeter area. Industrial prototype development and basic research are permitted in the core, special uses in the perimeter, and laboratories are special in the core and not permitted in the perimeter. Again, the idea is more intense uses allowed in the core, less intense transitional uses, either special uses or not permitted in the perimeter. With regards to dimensional standards, the difference really is that of intensity. So for a height requirement in the core, it's a minimum of 2 stories, up to 14 stories. Up to 25 feet to 170 feet. Nowhere in the city of Troy, in any zoning district, do we have a minimum of 2 stories. Everything allows for a 1-story minimum. So this actually raises the bar a little bit about intensity. It requires a minimum of 2 stories. Again, Director Samana and I went back and forth. Should it be 1 story allowed? Should we go up to 3 to 4 stories minimum? We kind of land on 2. Again, there's no other district in Troy that does require a minimum of two stories as well. In the perimeter, it allows 1 to 4 stories. There is a 4-story building already in the perimeter, so again, it is an existing condition already in the area. Front setback, because these are intended to be much larger buildings, we felt that it was more appropriate to have a larger front setback from 30 to 60 feet. Again, it's talked about massing and scale in relation to the street. And for the perimeter, a 10 to 20, similar to how our form-based district is established now. And then the rest are saying, 80% impervious for both. One of the things we put in is a required public open space in plaza. We don't have a requirement that in any district right now. We have open space, but typically it's private open space or something. This is public. This is intended to be for public open space, public plaza, because one of the things you'll notice in the master plan for this area, we really talk about community gathering spaces and areas where communities can get to come together. Office workers can gather for lunch. You can have different community functions in there. And so this is intended to serve kind of a community function. So there's a requirement for 10% of the site to be open space or open plaza. And we do put a cap on the residential density at 24 units an acre and 10 units an acre. And that's consistent with the existing multifamily designation right now. Very similar, you'll note the next 3 slides I'll talk about are very similar to our existing form-based district requirements. I'll just note a few differences that we have. Just the nature of the area, more office use, et cetera, potentially more residential. We felt that the requirement of 50% transparency that we have on Big Beaver and other districts probably is not applicable. So we reduced that to 35% along those front facades and 20% in the areas facing parking. So just a little bit lower threshold that we'll require in Big Beaver. And again, have the same provision that the planning commission can waiver or modify that based on security or safety or privacy concerns. The orientation, entrance, transition, et cetera, same as the Big Beaver requirements. We didn't vary from those, so there's commonality in that. And then the other thing we thought may be important to discuss is, should there be a specific North Troy streetscape requirements? And we're talking about sidewalks, pedestrian zones, street trees, landscaping, furniture, lighting, et cetera. Simply to distinguish this area as a different area of Troy than what you find on Big Beaver, Maple Road, Nodes, et cetera. So there should be, we would like some discussion about specific streetscape requirements for this particular area. And that summarizes it.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
That was a nice summary. I thought you guys did a really great job on this, and I was really pleased with what I saw. So, in terms of opening it for discussion, I mean, I guess I'll just call on people and we can bring something up. And then I'm sure some people have lists of things, but bring up a topic, we'll discuss it, let everyone weigh in, and then we'll move on, okay? So we'll start with Mr. Faison.
Thank you. So the perimeter at certain points abuts on single-family residential, right? And so my question was on the 4 stories for multiple family. Is that consistent with the way we treat other districts like this that abut single-family residential?
It's consistent with how we treat Big Beaver and Maple Road, where they abut single family. And abut's kind of a strong term. I mean, Northfield Parkway is a separator along the west side. The only area it does abut is that northeast corner. And I guess a little bit in the south. That northeast corner is a pre-established campus, which we don't see redeveloping anytime in the near future. But you notice, for example, this is a 4-story building, which is abutting or adjacent to this existing townhome development. So We felt that a four-story, I'm sorry, Mr. Fay, we felt a four-story was appropriate for the perimeter district area.
I was thinking about further north. There.
Yeah, so these are separated by a road. These primarily face inward. Certainly a point of discussion that we can have.
Okay.
I mean, it is a good point. I think along with having the setbacks in the perimeter go to, being pushed to the road, then it does make it, right now we've got those 4-story buildings, but there's a huge parking lot. I mean, really quick, I just want to say, I don't know if anyone drove through North Troy. I mean, I drive through it every day, but I actually went onto all the little side roads and town center and what's that one called? I mentioned the New King. Never even knew about that.
Yeah.
What struck me was, quite frankly, how beautiful and green the space was. There was clearly very thoughtful planning going into building those offices with a lot of green space. It was like rolling hills and berms, really. But it was, but the biggest thing that struck me was how over-parked we were. I mean, so you'd see all this nice green and then you'd turn and it was vast parking lots. So what I think this process that we're going through right now is great, because I think there's a lot of potential for infill of these parking lots. And also to connect and start having the green space be usable green space. And we're talking about, having it become a more walkable and connected area based on what we're building. And I also read the provisions of the master plan to refresh, and it talked exactly about that. It's what you build, it's not, So anyway, sorry, Mr. Faison, back to your point. I just wanted to bring that up because right now, when we talk about a 4-foot building that's, set back hundreds of feet because it's in a parking lot, it doesn't seem that it's imposing on those neighborhoods. But if all of a sudden now we put those 4-story buildings right up 10 feet from Northfield Parkway, will we feel differently?
Yeah, and certainly, if that's a concern of the Planning Commission and you feel that, 4 stories, here is more appropriate than 4 stories here, there's zoning techniques that we can use about where 4 stories may be appropriate. And we could treat it like a node where, if you're in so many feet of residential, you have a larger setback if that's a concern of the Planning Commission. I think the baseline we're trying to establish is 4 stories at some location in there is that an appropriate maximum height.
I understand.
Mr. Fox.
So I think, to repeat the chairwoman's comments, I think this is a fantastic first draft. You can tell you guys put a lot of work into it and very much appreciate it. I think the only few notes that I had was I did, and we talked about this in the pre-meeting, I did notice a lot north of 75 that looks like it could be designated as a core lot as opposed to a perimeter lot because it's not abutting any single family, just that little triangle in the top right corner. Seeing that potentially added to the core to create some more opportunities for that section. Otherwise, on the topic of the street amenities that were brought up near the end there, I think what would be incredibly interesting for this district, and we had a PUD in this district that I was, I think it was right when I got on, we were looking at that PUD. I think focusing on a pedestrian focus once you get into it. I mean, Troy is a city of 4 attempts at a downtown that we have at this point. And I think this is another opportunity to create another walkable space that sure folks need to drive to, but once they're there, or if they happen to be living in there, it creates we can create a good pedestrian and walking focused environment. I think would be a very good investment here. That's my thoughts on that last question that you had. Otherwise, yeah, this is a great draft.
While we're on the topic of the streetscape, I was curious as to whether we have streetscape standards anywhere else in Troy.
We have Big Beaver design guidelines. They are not standards. We try to apply them when we can, but we don't have any codified streetscape requirements. I have seen codes and I have written codes that actually talk about that area between the building and the public right-of-way, what has to occur in that. And it talks about lighting requirements, trash dumpster or trash enclosures, benches, landscaping, pavement, I mean, public art, there's all sorts of things you can do from a zoning in between that front building line and the edge of the sidewalk, and that's the streetscape elements I'm talking about. But in addition, the purpose of that is also to, when private investment occurs, match it with public investment and what the city does with regards to landscaping in the right of way and street improvements and stuff like that. So it's a partnership that works both publicly and privately, but there are zoning standards you can put in there that talk about that area between the building and the sidewalk. And that's the streetscape elements I'm talking about.
Okay, I had a feeling that Big Beaver was probably as close as we get to anything standardized, but I didn't think we actually had it. So personally, I would love to see it. I would love to see you enter North Troy and all that surrounding area and feel like there's this cohesive branding sort of. And I'd love to see, I mean, I don't know if doesn't City Council have to sign off on that kind of a partnership, public-private partnership to do a streetscape? Because it's obviously costs the city money.
Yeah, if it's in the right of way, obviously the city is invested in this. And ultimately the city council is gonna be the one that votes the text amendment that talks about what the private investment has to be in terms of a zoning perspective as well.
Got it, okay. Ms. Malala Holly.
I'm pretty decent with reading maps. However, Mr. Carlisle, can you point out where the Aptiv building, is it in the NTP area in the northeast?
The active building?
Aptiv, former Delphi?
No, it's not there.
It's not north of this, okay. So it's not in that northeast section where I'm seeing NTP?
No.
It's not in that section,
So
okay.
just reference, this is the PUD that I believe Mr. Fox was referencing in the corner of Long Lake and Crooks.
What's the latest on that?
Wait.
One second. Sorry about that. The northernmost boundary, what is that northernmost boundary that we have there?
Square Lake.
Square Lake, okay. And what's the easternmost boundary that we have there where it's NTP in the north? The blue line, yes, what?
Property line.
Okay, so,
There's no road here.
But what's the building that's NTP?
Is that the Michigan State building?
Michigan State is to the west.
It's controlled by consent judgment. It's a research office complex.
That's what you're talking about.
that's what I thought I was,
There's
yeah.
a research complex called Top Apton.
Used to be Delphi.
It is called Aptiv.
Yeah, it was Delphi, it is now active.
It's called Aptiv.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because it is, yeah, you can see that.
We were talking about that.
So that's my reference point, basically, in terms of,
Out of the zone, okay.
so here's my question. You all are familiar with the parking space that is in front of Locino, is that how I say the restaurant?
Yeah.
Locino's, that's the huge parking asphalt space that we have there, right? So areas such as this is what I'm looking in terms of redevelopment. But when we say mixed use, is there any way we can specify in the core area especially, is there any way we can say what we would like to see in terms of mixed use and how the ground level should be utilized? Not that we give them, you have to have this, but kind of general idea so that when we do any kind of site plan review, we know that we are looking into something that we have envisioned for the space. I would also like to see less asphalt space there, like the chairperson mentioned, and more of active usage of this space. And of course, vertical. I am looking vertical in this space. I definitely know that Troy needs it, and there is a lot of interest for people to come into this area. They can live in Troy, they can go to Rochester schools, or they can access Rochester or any other communities on either side. But this is a space where we need to go vertical. And when I say vertical, I'm talking about the entire first floor be full of vibrant living space, not residential, but any kind of studios, pottery, art, yoga, place, something like that. Is there any way we can let people know that that is the kind of development Troy is looking for in this area? I don't know how to specify it or how to put it in words, but I don't want it to be just any typical office building with some residential occupation. That's not my vision for this area, because this is a potential where we can really put a stamp on a growing Troy that can encompass the future movement into the space.
I think I'll answer it two ways. First, I think from a zoning, you can, within legality, you can zone for however you want it to be. I mean, you could specify that it has to be, and you pick your uses, it has to be yoga spaces, studios, whatever. I think the question gets down to a market issue too, is that how much can the support in here, and this is intended to be a little more, we call form-based, where we worry a little bit more about what the building placement is, what the height is, what it looks like, and a little bit less concerned about what the uses are, as long as they're within those prescribed uses that we have in the ordinance. So we have residential, we have office, we have et cetera. That's the intent of what this district is. That's what Big Beaver is. That's what all our nodes are. And so I want to be really careful that we don't tighten the zoning so much that we choke out any redevelopment in this particular area. So we are more concerned from our perspective, and Planning Commission, tell us if we're wrong, is we were more concerned about allowing an array of appropriate uses, but being really focused on design, layout, pedestrian amenities, those types of landscaping, those type of issues. If your concern is like residential on the first floor, that's certainly, we have that on Big Beaver, I believe, or somewhere, where we don't allow residential on the first floor. It has to be residential on second and above. That's certainly certainly an appropriate thing we could do. But if you want to get so prescriptive that you have to dictate what the first floor uses and they're very limited, I'd be a little bit concerned from doing that just from a choking out the market perspective. So I don't know if I answered your question or.
Yeah,
Okay. I don't want to bring a town like Denver here, because we are not Denver. Denver is much more busier. But having been to Columbus and some other places recently where this has become a norm, where they are wanting people to create a vibrant lower level, and then whatever you put on top, offices, residences, is fine. But the lower level is the place where you have open spaces, you have congregation spaces, weekends or weekdays alike. Food trucks can come in there because you have residences and or offices sitting on top. That's the vibrancy I'm seeking in this area too. That's one point. And my second point is there any way we can, and I don't know, but I'm just throwing my idea out here, is there any way we can say that we minimize asphalt parking, surface parking, and try to see if we can do underground parking for a 14-story like building space? Reduce asphalt as much as possible. We are going to be supporting the environment too by doing so. And at the same time, those parking spaces we have enough of it around the city. So is there any way we can specify that?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to do that would simply say that you limit the amount of impervious surface on a site. And simply say by lowering the impervious surface, you either have to parking has to go up or parking has to go down. We have found that it's extremely, extremely, extremely expensive for both ways. So there's that balance I keep talking about zoning conditions that choke a market, and I just think it's a discussion that we probably should have if that's the direction you want to go, because
What's extremely expensive?
parking up and parking down.
Oh,
So
got it.
underground
got it.
parking and
Yes.
garage space parking is extremely expensive. So again, it's that balance of encouraging redevelopment versus market conditions.
I'd like to comment really quick on Ms. Malala-Holly's comment, because one of the requirements for the core is that the minimum height is 2 stories, which, as they mentioned, is nowhere else allowed or not allowed, but is no more required in the city of Troy. So when you think about 2 stories, you know, you think about the Starbucks and the Panera and the Beyond, all those sort of newer developments on Crooks Road in that area, those all would not comply. So think about it. 2 stories is really requiring a mixed use building where the first floor would be your Starbucks, but the second floor, they'd have to put something up there. And it would probably be an office or a residential. And an office in an office park is, I would think, is less likely for market reasons. And then I'll get to one more thing I wanted to comment on is because we're talking about that impervious, the maximum impervious surface. You know, I kind of did a little bit of Google searching on that rule. I think 80% is crazy high. Like, that should be lowered. That is an opportunity for us to acknowledge that the city of Troy is so overparked. Let's bring that number down, I think. That's one opportunity. And then just while I'm on that subject is I think we also have an opportunity for having this be the sort of cool area where we're actually going to put much stricter, I don't know what the terms are, but like sustainability, green incentives in that area. I think it'd be really cool and it's a good opportunity. But anyway, Mr. Faison, I think, wanted to talk about.
A couple of things. I want to comment on something that you said, but first I want to say what I should have said before I asked my first question. I think staff did a great job on the write-up and the analysis. I thought it was excellent, and I think it's generally in the right direction. The 2-story building, so you mentioned the Starbucks and the Panera. I feel like some of those buildings, they look like they're 2 stories or they have a second story that's not really functional. So how is this different from that?
Yeah, Brett and I had this conversation. So in all our form-based districts, we have a minimum height of 14 feet. And often because of that, it looks like it's 2 stories. If an applicant wants to there's certain reliefs you get from our ordinance right now if you go to 2 stories. We ensure when we actually review the plan, it's a functional, usable second story. So I can't speak specifically about the Starbucks and other ones, but my understanding is it's a 1-story. So it would require, those are non-compliant because they would require a functional 2-story.
Okay. And then the last question. So we were talking about what we would like to see. I was curious if you've gotten feedback from developers or the development community, inquiries about, you know, this area, and is there some consistency with what you're hearing from them?
I think, you know, Brett and I have had casual conversations with a number of developers about a number of spaces in here. What we're trying to do here would assist them in achieving what they want to do. I don't think we would create any nonconformities on what they want to do based on what we're promoting.
So you're seeing potentially market demand for the direction that we're going in?
We haven't, I mean, every application, let me say, every application we've seen in the core, or every conversation we've had about the core, it's all been multiple stories. So the idea of the single story not being allowed we haven't seen that yet. That may become a point of discussion in the future with the development community. But from what we've seen, this would be in line with what they're trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any way you could do like a 1-story special use in the core? So it could be, or is that
Yeah,
just...
I don't know how Director Sabaton feels. I'd really like to test this with 2 stories and see how it goes. If we do a 1-story, I would say that we would only allow it as an outlaw or an accessory building to a much larger development on site, where it's multiple stories. But I would like to test this 2-story and see how it goes.
Mr. Tagle.
Just a thought on that. I think if we think this is a little bit more of an urban context, you don't see 1-story buildings in an urban context. It's a multiple story. So I would like the approach. Also, what Ms. Parakis had asked or had commented on about the 80% impervious, I wanted to ask, how did you arrive at that number? Because it seems high to me as well.
That's what Big Beaver is, if you back into it. Because we only require 20% open space in Big Beaver. So the rest of the 80% could be impervious. Okay. What I would suggest that we consider here is breaking impervious for parking versus impervious for building. Because as Mr. Tagle said, this is intended, could be in more of an urban environment where you may have buildings that are 80% and you go to your underground parking in that stage. So maybe we have a maximum percentage of surface parking lot that would be the actual limitation, not a pure impervious surface percentage.
I think it's a good approach.
Yeah, because there may, I mean, there may be a nice development that's 80% of a the building takes up 80% of the site, and parking's underground, or parking's on the deck, or whatever it may be, and 20% green space, and we still like it. So like I said, I think we should maybe think about it where we have an actually percentage of the parking lot calculation in addition or supplemental to the total impervious surface of the site.
Can I just follow up on one thing? As far as the streetscape, I'm all for that. I think that's an important element or component that should be included in this zoning districts.
Mr. Krant.
Yeah, I love what you've done here. Just, it's phenomenal, great work. The key element that stuck out to me was create an identity for this, unique identity. I think that was, that one word, identity, just rang a bell with me. Brent and I attended the National Planning Conference in Detroit this last weekend, and I saw so many great presentations of something similar to this that were just awe-inspiring. So I would, fully support anything that would create a unique identity to this place, and maybe it would require, I don't know how far the city planning department can stretch out, but maybe hiring one of those design urban consultants to design it. It seems that it needs that kind of framework overall so that it's consistent throughout as far as the parks, the flowers, the fountains, all the other amenities that I saw at the conference. So anyway, that's my thought. I'm just so pleased that you did everything, but the identity word just stuck out to me, like, yes, this is, we go there and we're in a completely different world from other parts of Troy.
Director Savanant and I agree tonight. If you like this, he did all the work on it. If you didn't like it, I did all the work on it. So
Wow.
he takes all the credit for it.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Fox.
I think as far as clear guidance from us, I just wanted to state for the record, I would also support if we put in, similar to Big Beaver, a ban on residential on the first floor. I think just taking that over from the Big Beaver district. I also think that with the focus on pedestrian amenities, you are going to kind of naturally see the permeable surface drop. I mean, obviously there'll be like walkways, like, walking paths, et cetera. But I think, for pedestrian friendly, it also brings trees. It also brings, bushes, benches, things that go along with that. So I think by focusing on the pedestrian aspect as well, when they're doing the streetscapes, it'll also encourage, some of the other topics we've been discussing with the permeable surface and whatnot.
Mr. Lambert.
Yeah, just to echo everyone's comments, I appreciate all the hard work. A few suggestions, or I guess one question is about drive-ups. Would that preclude Starbucks or Panera's or financial institution drive-ups? I mean, if we're going to have banks or credit unions in here, we're going to have drive-ups, I assume. So what was your leaning on why you want to prevent drive-ups?
Well, so as written, we don't allow drive-throughs. When you say drive-ups, I assume you mean drive-throughs. Is that
Whatever.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
In the core, because again, the intent is for intensity and more pedestrian walkability, and that just flies in the face by having drive-through type uses, because those are typically going to be one-story uses anyways, because it's hard to do a drive-through in a multi-story building. So that's why we did it. We really felt that it should be not permitted in the core. In the perimeter, we really struggled with this one, if it should be allowed or not. We have it as a special use. I don't know how Director Savanant feels. I mean, if you said we don't want drive-throughs in the perimeter, I think we'd be okay with that. But we did think that there are going to be uses that will want to go in that area, support the core, that would be a drive-through use.
And then
sorry, Mr. Chairman, I thought in Big Beaver, we don't allow drive-through use for a restaurant, but we do allow drive-through use for a bank. So we can differentiate between different drive-through type uses.
Okay. The second kind of is a suggestion, and I don't know how my colleagues feel about this, but some of the, in the use chart you have, some of them that you have in the perimeter, I would prefer to see them as special use rather than permitted. Like, for example, fine and performing arts facilities, commercial kennels, medical clinics, that I would prefer to see it as special use rather than being permitted, but I can, forward you my thoughts, but it's obviously, it's up to the planning commission on how they feel about it. In the perimeter is special use.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Tagle.
On section, where we're talking about design standards for non-residential use, it's actually page 97 of the PDF. You've got entrances for all non-residential use mixed-use dwellings shall be clearly identified by at least one of the following. I had made a note there about landscape and grade plane elements, but also if we can tie this into the streetscape, maybe somehow we don't have to repeat it in both places.
So just to be clear, you think we should add another provision about landscaping or,
Yeah,
or
there's like
streetscape,
4,
right?
Yeah, I would say other elements that could help identify the entrance would be landscape or ground plane elements. But those are also talked about in the streetscape section as well, is what those elements could be.
Okay.
One other thing. I guess this would be page 97, 8, 9. At the top of the page, there's an item 3 there. It says windows for building sides shall be concentrated toward the front edge of the building in locations most visible from an urban open space or public right-of-way. I would ask you to consider striking the words toward the front edge of the building. And just it would read, windows for building sides shall be concentrated in locations most visible for an urban open space, public right-of-way. Because I don't know if the front of a building would be any more visible than the side of a building, depending on how these parcels are actually developed.
If I remember correctly, we had the same discussion on the notes, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah.
You wanted to see if I was really reading this.
So did we forget to change it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Lambert, I don't know if you were done.
Oh, yes, I was done.
You
Yep,
were done?
Yep.
Okay. And I didn't know if you wanted us to go through each one
Well,
of
we don't need to now, but I mean,
Okay.
I can suggest it to staff and they can
Okay,
give it
okay.
to us as alternatives when we discuss a final
Okay.
ordinance.
I think Mr. Buechner had his hand up.
Approximately what percentage of this space is not used well, is underutilized, or is blight? I'm just curious.
I don't know if we have a percentage.
Of the entire area is blight?
Not doing well, underperforming, empty, too much
Yeah,
parking.
one of the first notes I made was, see if I can get data on the office vacancies in this area. I think you'd be surprised by how high they are.
That's my point, and we're all from here, and we've all driven, everybody in the room's driven by this. I feel like there's room for improvement, and there are a lot of people that don't want growth in the city of Troy. I just don't want blight in the city of Troy. I grew up not far from here, and I just remember that being a vibrant spot when I was a kid, and I'd love to see it be more developed so that it's not blight.
So I can tell you the office vacancy rate in Troy as a whole right now is around 15%, but I think this area brings that number up.
So I'm a fan of trying to make it, and then we still have standards that we will try to maintain to keep it going in the right direction, but I just love to see spots that have been empty for a long time be vibrant again. That's my 2 cents.
Mr. Fox.
Well, and I think to Mr. Buechner's point, I think taking a look and working with the market to try to understand the types of uses that they're looking to build in this type of area is a great way to try to, because there's trepidation about growth in Troy, and I think focusing it in an area like this with its proximity to the highway, the fact that there is already a 16-story building on site, thus tall buildings aren't necessarily going to be new or shocking to the area. I think this is a good location for us to start bringing folks in, whether they be new residents or, homes are built for folks who want to downsize that potentially be on this location. I think that this is a great spot to try to start pulling folks into so that the offices will fare better, the restaurants will do better. If you allow it to be built, then they will come, or something like that. So.
I personally like the public open / plaza space. I almost wonder if we could make it 15%, push it a little. But anyway, it's a nice start, and I like that. I did have one question, and I don't mean to be difficult. I'm just curious. You had density restrictions on there. Can you put it into context for me? Like the core, it says 24 per acre. Like, can you give me an example?
I tied that directly to we have a multifamily zoning district in Troy, and the multifamily, when it's not adjacent, if you're multifamily zoning and you're not adjacent to residential,
Okay.
it's 24 units per acre, which is pretty dense. I don't think we have many projects in Troy that are 24 units an acre. In the multifamily zoning district, if you're adjacent to residential, that lowers down to 10 units per acre. So that's where I used that as a starting point, where I had the core as 24 units per acre, perimeter as 10 units per acre, just because it relates to an existing code standard already in place. 24 is a pretty dense project.
But give me for example, the Westington. I think I'm saying it right. The southeast corner of Waddles and Crooks. Like, what is that density?
It's not 24 units an acre. It's much less.
Much less. Okay.
But again, those are 3-4 stories? 3
stories.
So we're talking about potentially up to 14-story buildings where you're going to need more units per acre.
Okay. Honestly, it struck me as low. So I was saying, oh, I like that because we're not, like what we don't want to see, what I don't want to see is I'm all about putting multifamily and having lots of units in a tall building. What I don't want to see is low attached housing that's 2-story, crammed in, super dense. Because to me, that's not what we're going for in this area. That's not the type of housing I would want to see in that area. So that's kind of what I was wondering about. Like for example, I wouldn't want to see a bunch of townhomes going up, caked in there like row by row with alleys and just packed in there to try to maximize density.
In the core or in the perimeter? Because in the core, we have a provision that does not allow attached product, which would be what those townhomes are. The core, we're talking about residential in the core, it's to go vertical. That's what the core is allowing to do for residential. Now, the perimeter does allow those townhomes attached product. So I don't know.
I guess, like, for me, this area, I could see the townhomes along Northfield Parkway, fronting Northfield Parkway. But the minute we start then saying, oh, all the parking in the back, the infill, and we'll do alleys and rows and make a whole community of like townhomes, to me, all of a sudden, it kind of lost its charm. The idea is to have housing along Northfield Parkway with these townhomes, and then we'll put something else back there, not pack it in these like barrack-like style housing to fill in that parking lot. That's what I was kind of wondering, if we have assurances against getting even in the perimeter.
I'll have to think through that.
Okay, but I think you know what I mean.
I do. I don't know how to zone away from that, but I do know. I think I know what your concerns are.
You're up for the challenge. Any other feedback that we want to provide? Because this really was a feedback session, right? And you guys are gonna,
I guess I had one, just
Yep, go ahead, Mr.
one final
Looks like
question.
you have a couple.
I believe it had been previously mentioned that there was potentially a developer looking to put in a grocery. Am I crazy? Did I imagine that?
There's no active application.
There's no active application, okay.
It's the worst kept, it's a rumor that's floating around.
Okay. I
I
guess,
can't tell you we have an
so
application.
would that fall under retail? Like, is grocery considered like under the same umbrella in our ordinance as retail?
It would be large format retail.
Large format retail, which is current, in the current draft, special approval in the core, not permitted in the perimeter. Thank you very much.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Is there any thought to a signage for this area? Welcome to North Troy or something like that? Or is it just,
At this point, we haven't thought of it. We have a separate sign ordinance that would regulate it now. If we wanted to make changes for whatever reason, we could look at that.
We don't even welcome us into Troy. We're not gonna start welcoming people into North Troy. I mean, right? Where do we have a welcome to Troy sign besides those little ones from like the 80s? On the metal rods. Okay,
yeah, I know, then everybody's gonna ask.
yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Faison.
I just had a question on the process. You know, so we're giving you feedback today, and kind of where does it go from there, and then kind of how does it all play out?
I'll start and you tell me if I'm wrong. I think we'll take another round at revising it based on the discussion you had tonight. Probably have another session like this where we kind of go through it again. Depending on how that goes, we may have another round of revisions at some point. When you feel comfortable as a planning commission, that's when we would put it into, we'll schedule a public hearing. Planning commission will hold the public hearing and then make a recommendation to city council. And then ultimately, the city council determination to accept the text amendments or not. It will also include a map amendment or a rezoning because we are actually rezoning these properties to, there are all these different zoning districts now. They're all going to be consolidated into one of these two districts. So it's a normal.
Very similar to the neighborhood node process.
The differentiation is, well, I will give you two differentiations. One is the neighborhood node, we had a steering committee, which we have not chosen to do that for this. And two, I think there's a little, I think this hopefully couldn't get done a little quicker than the nodes could. I think we've got a good start. I think there's some momentum from some of the development in other community to kind of get this thing moving along as well. There's some applications that are waiting to see how this goes, we believe.
That was kind of the question I was asking earlier about developer interest in
Yeah,
some of the things that you're talking about.
We think there's
Right.
we know there's some applications waiting to see which way this goes. And depending on which way this goes, if it doesn't go that way, they would have to go through a separate rezoning, a PUD or whatever process. So they're
Right.
waiting to see that if they want to do what they want to do, does it fit in line with what this ordinance says?
Got it. Thank you.
Did I see your hand up, Mr. Lambert? No. Nobody else? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are now on the Planning Commission bylaws. Is Mr. Lambert presenting this, or?
Absolutely.
Let me pull it up here on the,
Yeah, Mr. Lambert, thank you for taking the lead on this, and
I wouldn't say I took the lead. I would say that I worked with Ms. Dufresne and Mr. Savidan to come up with language to, essentially, it's to say that our goal is to meet twice a month, but not necessarily tying us to twice a month. So if Mr. Savidan's shaking his yes, so that's a good summary of what the bylaw amendment is.
okay. Anyone have any questions or comments?
I like it.
A very solid language, very to the point, very much in favor.
Okay, so I guess I'll get. You really think I wasn't going to have a comment? Okay, I mean, great work. I think it's good, but I do like how you guys say the planning commission shall schedule regular meetings on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month. That's great. I do have concerns when we say the planning commission may cancel meetings if it is determined there's a potential conflict with a holiday, election, or other event that could impact the ability to hold an effective meeting. And the reason I say it is because it makes it sound like we can only cancel meetings if it directly conflicts with a holiday, election, or other event. We've canceled meetings for Troy School District spring break, and we've canceled meetings for the day after Memorial Day, which is not a holiday. We've canceled meetings for the day after President's Day which isn't a holiday. So I think we have to be careful with that. I don't mind leaving that, but I think we need to soften it a little bit and say, we can cancel a regularly scheduled meeting if, for example, it is determined blah, 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 and/or any such other reasons. But I don't think the way it's written, we can keep it like that. There's also the reason that we've canceled when there just hasn't been anything on the docket. I mean, something happens and somebody withdraws an application or it's no longer ready or whatever, so that's another reason we cancel meetings, which I think is acceptable. And then finally, it did bring me to ask the question, who actually has the authority and what is the procedure of canceling the meetings? While I've been chair, I feel that you've called me each time and asked me what I thought, but I don't know that it was me who had the authority or if you were just getting my feedback. I mean, is it the planning department who cancels the meetings? Do we have, we clearly don't vote on it. So I don't know that it needs to be in there, but I kind of just want to know what the rule is. And maybe it should be in there.
We've done it a couple ways. We've done it where the planning commission has identified a reason and a majority has voted, made a motion, seconded, voted, or administratively we've recognized some reason. There's an election, or we've got numerous members who aren't going to be there, or the one applicant who was on the agenda has pulled their application. So it's administratively or by planning commission. And what I typically do is you're the chair now, I would contact you and say, Mariana, this is what's happening, what do you think? And we talk about it, and I don't cancel until I've given you a heads up.
Okay.
That's kind of the way we've done it.
But there's no situation where a chairperson could cancel the meeting on their own. I couldn't call you and say, we're canceling the meeting, right? I mean, and there's no, just making sure that we're protecting from that.
Yeah, ultimately, it's my position is responsible for the agenda. Mm-hmm. So it would be a partnership. We would be collaborative. We'd collaboratively come up with, together we would make a determination in the best interest of the city and the planning commission.
Okay. So as for the other tweaks, what do you think of that?
I think it's good input, and we can make that and bring it back. What I can do is I'll continue to use Mr. Lambert as a point person, take your input and share it with Ms. Dufresne and Mr. Lambert. And if you want in on it, I'm happy to send it to you too.
For the potential interest of maybe a hopefully simple solution, would swapping the word, so it reads, if it is determined that there is a potential conflict with a holiday, election, or other event, if swapping event with circumstance, would that cover the other situations that you're worried about not being included? Because they would all fall under the category of circumstance?
I agree with that point. I was thinking something similar, not that specific language, but just broader language, because it was attendance, lack of items on the agenda. It's impracticality of having a meeting.
Impracticality,
Yeah, election, so amending it to say the planning commission may cancel meetings if it is determined that there is a potential conflict with a holiday, election, or other circumstance that could impact the ability to hold an effective meeting.
What do you think, Mr. Lawyer?
Sounds good to me.
Should it say the planning commission and the planning department along with the planning commission may cancel meetings?
I think you raise a good point. Maybe it needs another paragraph about how to counsel. So we can take,
I mean, I'm not trying to like make it, I just know that like doing it on the fly is always dangerous because, oh yeah, let's just change that one word and then we go back and then we vote on it and then I'm like, oh, well,
Yeah.
look at the unintended consequence if we just thought about it for 10 more minutes, you know? So I don't feel comfortable doing it on the fly. But, I mean,
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good
so it's not that long of an item, and we'll get it ahead of time. And if you want me to review it first before it goes in the agenda packet, so you don't get surprised again. But you did great work. And then I just think then we'll have a chance to review it, we'll vote on it quickly, and we can probably do it next meeting.
That works for me, so.
Okay,
Would
sorry,
we need a
guys.
vote on postponing it? Okay, cool.
It wasn't, right? It wasn't.
Hasn't been
Wasn't an
moved,
action
so.
item.
Yeah, okay. So does anyone else have any other comments before we move on from that? Okay, so we are on public comment for items on the agenda. Come on up.
Some of this might be redundant to the very thorough conversation you had, but I don't have time to rewrite it on the fly, so please forgive some, maybe like I wasn't listening because I was.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. I have read the master plan before. Since first reading it, I have read many agenda packets, both from council and the planning commission. Rereading the master plan in preparation for tonight's North Troy zoning revisions, I saw so much more than I did before, and I feel much more excited about what it could become. I see real opportunity for the kind of walkable downtown residents often speak about, with green space, gathering spaces, and actual destination that create activity and community. While I still have concerns about some of the housing concepts, I do see a vision worth pursuing. One thing that stood out to me was on page 104 of tonight's packet, the 11 principles for creating great community places. The first principle recognizes community as the expert. I hope that principle is honored in a meaningful way for the neighborhoods most impacted by the proposed changes. I think it was wise to create two zones, a core and a perimeter. My question is whether there are safeguards in the new zoning language that prioritize neighborhood compatibility over developer profit. Safeguards that give you a real legal basis to deny designs that are not conducive to preserving the character of residents that residents bought into. Another point is the pedestrian experience. The master plan references sidewalks along Crooks and Long Lake being pushed back from the pavement with streets, lighting, and landscape buffering, providing both real and perceived protection for pedestrians. I am not convinced the setbacks fully achieve that vision, and I hope you can address or expand on that. I point this out because in many ways I think is this part of what prevented the Big Beaver corridor from becoming a truly walkable downtown many had hoped for. I'm also still haunted by the developer working on the Plex office site stating he wanted to add additional towers. I was hoping for some elaboration on what in the zoning revisions presented tonight would ensure that that site does not become overdeveloped.
Thank you very much for coming up. Seeing no one else in the room, we'll close public comment and move on to planning commission comment. I'm going to start with, Jared, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'll say a little bit.
Okay.
I was gonna say when I started here like 3 years ago, Brent would talk to me about North Troy, so it's really cool to see how we've gone to this point. Something, and I don't have GIS to be able to clarify with you guys, but the couple properties that do abut single-family residential on the northeast end, that Mel Holly was talking about, and also on the southwest end are regulated by consent judgment. So even though the district would apply, there are restrictions on those. And then the other two, one does have a proposal already for a low intensity, like separate structure on that site. And another one is a sign company that's long established, has given us a tour. Building is really nice, has lots of investment, and won't have much infill development there for the foreseeable future. So those impacts on single family residential are not gonna be significant.
Thank you. That's good to know. Ms. Malala Holly.
Oh, thank you. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank Mr. Carlisle and Mr. Savidan for putting such a wonderful, wonderful presentation today on the new zoning district that you are envisioning for Troy. But a big shout out to Ms. Zarnecki for doing a wonderful job in putting together the minutes of the meeting from last week, last meeting. It was a challenge indeed, and I cannot even say how many hours she spent putting that all together. So thank you very much for doing that. And thank you, Mr. Lambert, for working on that. I think we did a lot of progress today, so I'm very happy. This meeting has been so wonderful and so many good ideas that came out today. And I can just envision what this new zoning district will look like. It is going to be awesome. Thank you.
I can't go after that, so I'll just pass it along.
Mr. Faison.
One thing that struck me about the application for the child care center was the amount of parking on that PNC site. And I remember years ago when it was just the PNC building and just that huge parking lot. And even with all the infill, it still feels like it's overparked. So it's a long lead-in to me saying, were we going to look at our parking ordinance at some point and potentially revise it? Because it doesn't seem to work. Certainly doesn't seem to work for that site, for example.
Yeah, we were waiting for, we used one of our consultants, OHM Advisors, our traffic people, to study 10 different apartment developments that have been constructed in Troy, study the parking characteristics of those and determine what the numbers should be for residential apartment units. And the first draft, we just talked about it. I received it while I was at the conference. I think there's some tweaks that I'd like to see them consider, but we should have that back, and we'd like to have OHM present the findings to the board, and that would jumpstart looking at our parking standards overall. We did reduce parking quite significantly in the past and provide flexibility in land banking, things like that. So I think we're pretty progressive for a suburban community, but there's still more work to be done. But remember, the North Troy district was mostly developed at a time when we had really, really high parking counts before we did a lot of these reductions. So yeah, there's work to be done still.
Yep, understood. But progress is being made.
Progress is being made.
And that's the answer to the question. Thank you.
Mr. Lambert.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Beekner for giving my son and I a tour of the Slick City building and the slides. I actually went down some of the slides, so I would encourage, and people are laughing now, so until the rest of you go down the slides, no laughing is going on. So, but thank you, Mr. Beekner.
Yeah, Mr. Fox.
I just wanted to, again, I mentioned it earlier, but again, compliment the planning department on the North Troy plan. I know we're all, on social media connected to different groups and whatnot, and I have seen some genuine excitement from some residents I'm connected with regarding the plan. I think you guys really knocked it out of the park, and like I said earlier, fantastic first draft, so.
Mr. Pratt.
Okay, Brent and I attended the National Planning Conference in Detroit last Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and today. And bottom line is, just give you a quick overview, I'd say about a third of the breakout sessions I attended were about artificial intelligence. The other third was probably just focused on Detroit itself. And then there was a mix for the other third of a lot of other stuff. The other takeaway of the planning conference was that there were not enough capacity for the mobile tours. Just give you one example. This one Northfield Downs, that whole new big development in Northfield. There were only 25 people allowed to go, and the bus held 52. So it was like, what? So I wanted to see that, but I guess I'll have to do it on my own. Anyway, that's my comments.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I am too.
Mr. Tagle.
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Massey?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Savinat.
No, thank you.
Mr. Carlisle. All right, well, thank you, everyone. I agree with Ms. Mulally. I thought it was a great meeting. We accomplished a lot, and kudos to the planning department on that. Thank you very much, and good night.
Nice job, Madam Chairwoman.
Oh, thank you.